Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight for another restful story from long ago. As the world outside grows still, I invite you to slow down and settle in for a soft journey through history's quieter corners. Tell me, if you'd like, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? It's a lovely thought, all of us scattered across time zones, sharing this moment. If you enjoy falling asleep to stories like this, consider subscribing. There's so much more we'll uncover together in the nights to come. Picture yourself awakening not to an alarm clock, but to the gentle lapping of the Nile against mud brick walls. The air carries the scent of lotus blossoms and baking bread, mixed with the earthier aromas of the river and the animals that depend upon it. You are not a queen, not a priestess, not even a merchant's wife. You are one of the countless women whose lives were spent in service to the divine Pharoh. Your days measured not in personal ambitions, but in the endless rhythm of duties that kept the royal household functioning. Your name, let us say, is Nebet. In the hieroglyphic script that adorns the temple walls, it means lady, though you are anything but noble born. You are perhaps 20 summers old, though the exact count matters little in a world where birthdays are unmarked by common folk. Your skin bears the warm bronze of the Egyptian sun. Your hands are calloused from years of labour, and your back carries the perpetual ache of one who has spent countless hours bent over washing basins and grinding stones. The life of a female servant in the Pharaoh's household was one of rigid hierarchy and unrelenting duty. You would have awakened each morning in the servants' quarters, a series of small windowless rooms built into the outer walls of the palace complex. These chambers, barely large enough for a sleeping mat and a small wooden chest for your few possessions, housed dozens of women like yourself. The air was close and warm, filled with the soft breathing of your fellow servants and the occasional cry of a baby, for some of the older women had children who lived with them in these cramped quarters. Your day would begin before dawn, when the first servant to wake would light the oil lamps that provided your only illumination. There was no gentle stirring, no moment to collect your thoughts. The overseer, a stern woman named Katie, who had served in the palace for more than 30 years, would clap her hands sharply, and the day would begin with the efficiency of a military operation. Your first task was always purification. In ancient Egypt, cleanliness was not merely practical, but deeply spiritual. The servants of the pharaoh were required to bathe daily, a luxury unknown to most common Egyptians, who might bathe in the Nile once a week if they were fortunate. You would make your way to the servants' bathing area, a series of stone basins fed by channels that carried fresh water from the Nile. The water was cool in the pre-dawn darkness, raising goosebumps on your skin as you scrubbed yourself with natron salt and sweet-smelling oils. Your clothing was simple but clean, a long linen dress that reached your ankles, undyed and practical, with sleeves that came to your elbows. Over this, you wore a broad collar of coloured beads, not the golden lapis lazuli of the nobility, but blue and green faience that caught what little light filtered into the palace corridors. Your hair was braided tightly against your head and covered with a simple linen headcloth, for loose hair was considered unseemly in the royal presence. After your morning ablutions, you would join the other servants in the great kitchen courtyard for your first meal of the day. This was a hurried affair, bread still warm from the ovens, a handful of dates or figs if the season was right, and weak beer that served as both nutrition and hydration. The bread was dark and coarse, made from emmer wheat that sometimes still contained bits of sand from the grinding stones, but it was filling and would sustain you through the morning's labours. Your specific duties would depend on your rank within the servant hierarchy and your particular skills. Perhaps you worked in the textile workshops, spending your days spinning flax into linen thread on a simple spindle, your fingers moving with the unconscious rhythm of years of practice. The work was meditative in its repetition, but demanding in its precision. The pharaoh's household required vast quantities of linen for clothing, for bed linens, for the mummy wrappings that would ensure his eternal life, for the sails of the royal barges that carried him up and down the Nile. Or perhaps you laboured in the palace laundry, where the steamy air was thick with the scent of soap made from animal fats and ash. Here you would spend your days bent over washing stones, scrubbing the delicate pleated linen garments of the royal family with tools made of wood and stone. The work was backbreaking, your hands constantly wet and wrinkled, your arms aching from the endless motion of beating cloth against stone. Yet there was a certain pride in seeing a stained garment emerge clean and white, ready once again for royal shoulders. The most prestigious assignment for a female servant was to work in the personal quarters of the pharaoh's wives and daughters. Here, you might serve as a lady's maid, helping the royal women with their elaborate daily toilettes. You would assist in applying the kohl that lined their eyes, mixing the malachite and galena with oil to create the dramatic black and green cosmetics that were both beautiful and practical, protecting the eyes from the harsh desert sun and the diseases carried by flies. You would help arrange their intricate wigs, made from human hair and elaborately styled with braids, curls, and ornaments of gold and precious stones. The royal women's natural hair was kept short beneath these wigs, both for comfort in the heat and for cleanliness. Your own hair you would never see adorned with gold, but you took satisfaction in your skill with the bronze mirrors and ivory combs that helped create these magnificent coiffures. The jewellery alone could take an hour to arrange properly. Broad collars of gold and semi-precious stones, armlets and bracelets that caught the light with every movement, rings for fingers and toes, and elaborate headdresses that marked rank and occasion. Each piece had its proper place and purpose, and as a servant, you would be expected to know them all, to help fasten clasps and ensure that every element was perfectly positioned. Yet for all the beauty and luxury that surrounded you in these moments, you remained invisible. The royal women spoke around you as if you were furniture, discussing matters of state and family, love affairs and political intrigue. You learned to keep your face carefully neutral, your eyes downcast, your hands steady as you worked. To show curiosity or interest in these conversations could mean severe punishment or even death. The palace was a world unto itself, a vast complex of courtyards and corridors, workshops and storerooms, gardens and pools. As a servant, you would come to know every corner of this domain, from the grand throne room where the pharaoh held court, to the humble storage areas where grain was kept in massive pottery jars. The walls around you told the story of Egypt's glory in brilliant painted reliefs, scenes of military victories, religious ceremonies, and the pharaoh's divine relationship with the gods. The religious aspects of palace life permeated everything you did. The pharaoh was not merely a king, but a living god, the earthly embodiment of Horus, son of the sun god Ra. Every action in his presence was ritualized. Every service you provided was an act of worship. When you prepared his food, you were feeding a deity. When you cleaned his chambers, you were maintaining a sacred space. This divine nature meant that even the most mundane tasks carried spiritual weight. Your diet as a servant was monotonous but adequate. Bread formed the foundation of every meal, supplemented by onions, garlic, and leeks that grew abundantly in the Nile Delta. Fish from the river provided protein, dried and salted for preservation. Lentils and chickpeas added variety, cooked into thick stews with whatever vegetables were in season. Beer was your primary beverage, weak and nutritious, brewed from barley and flavoured with dates or honey. On feast days and religious festivals, your rations might improve slightly. Perhaps a piece of duck or goose, or even beef if the celebration was particularly grand. Sweets made with honey and dates, figs fresh from the palace gardens, or pomegranates with their ruby seeds bursting with flavour. These occasions reminded you of the abundance that surrounded you daily, even if you could rarely partake of it. The seasonal rhythms of the Nile governed your life as surely as they did every Egyptian's. During the inundation, when the great river overflowed its banks and flooded the land, the palace took on a different character. The air was cooler and more humid, filled with the earthy scent of fertile mud. This was a time of renewal and preparation, when many of the workshops focused on creating goods for the coming year. As the waters receded and the planting season began, your duties might shift to include work in the palace gardens. Here, under the supervision of the royal gardeners, you would help tend the vegetables that supplemented the palace diet, the flowers that adorned the royal chambers, and the fruit trees that provided both sustenance and shade. The work was pleasant compared to indoor duties, your hands in the rich, dark soil, the sun warming your back as you weeded and watered. The harvest season brought its own intensity. Even palace servants were sometimes called upon to help with the grain harvest, the most crucial time of the Egyptian year. You might find yourself in the fields at dawn, helping to cut the wheat and barley with bronze sickles, or carrying baskets of grain to the threshing floors where cattle trampled it, to separate the kernels from the stalks. Your relationships with your fellow servants formed the emotional core of your existence. In the absence of family, for most servants were acquired young and had little contact with their birth families, your companions in servitude became your sisters, mothers, and daughters. The older women taught you not only the practical skills you needed to survive, but also the unwritten rules of palace life, which overseers could be trusted, which members of the royal family were kind or cruel, how to avoid the attention of those who might use their power over you for ill purposes. Among the servants, a complex social hierarchy existed. Those who served in the royal bedchambers or personal quarters held higher status than those who worked in the kitchens or laundries. Women who could read and write, a rare skill even among servants, might be elevated to positions of trust, helping to manage inventories or carry messages. Age brought respect and often easier duties, as long as health permitted. The threat of punishment was ever present in your daily life. Minor infractions, spilling something on a royal garment, arriving late to duties, speaking out of turn, might result in reduced rations or extra work assignments. More serious offences could bring beatings, branding, or even death. The most feared punishment was to be sold to work in the mines or quarries, a sentence that was often equivalent to death, but prolonged and agonizing. Yet the palace also offered protections unknown to common Egyptians. You were fed regularly, housed securely, and provided with medical care when needed. The palace physicians, trained in the medical knowledge that made Egypt famous throughout the ancient world, would tend to servants as well as royalty, though with less elaborate treatments. Broken bones were set, infections treated with honey and herbs, and difficult births attended by experienced midwives. If you were fortunate enough to catch the favourable attention of your superiors, opportunities for advancement existed. A servant who showed exceptional skill might be trained in specialised crafts, perhaps learning to weave the finest linen or to prepare the complex cosmetics used by the royal women. Some servants were even taught to read and write, skills that could elevate them to positions of real responsibility within the palace administration. The religious festivals that punctuated the Egyptian calendar provided the closest thing to leisure time in your existence. On these occasions, normal work routines were suspended, and even servants participated in the celebrations. You might witness the magnificent processions as the Pharaoh emerged from the palace in all his divine glory, carried on a golden throne or riding in a chariot, adorned with precious metals and gems. During the festival of Opet, when the statues of the gods were carried from Karnak to Luxor, the entire palace would be involved in the preparations. You might help prepare the special foods offered to the gods, or assist in decorating the royal barges that would carry the pharaoh along the Nile. These glimpses of the larger world beyond the palace walls reminded you that you were part of something greater than your daily round of duties. The changing of pharaohs brought uncertainty and opportunity in equal measure. When a ruler died, the entire palace hierarchy might shift. New pharaohs brought their own trusted servants and officials, sometimes displacing those who had served faithfully for decades. You might find yourself reassigned to different duties, or even transferred to another royal household entirely. As you aged in service, your value to the palace changed but did not necessarily diminish. Older servants who had proven their loyalty and discretion might be entrusted with training newer arrivals, or given oversight of specific areas of palace operations. Your years of experience made you valuable in ways that youth and strength could not match. The knowledge you accumulated over years of service was vast and varied. You learned to read the moods of the royal family, to anticipate their needs before they were spoken, to move through the palace corridors with the silent efficiency that marked the best servants. You understood the complex etiquette that governed every interaction, the proper forms of address for different ranks of nobility, the seasonal rhythms of court life. Your dreams, in those few quiet moments before sleep claimed you, might drift to possibilities beyond the palace walls. Perhaps you imagined a small house of your own, a plot of land by the Nile where you could grow your own vegetables. Maybe you dreamed of children, though the realities of your position made such dreams unlikely to be fulfilled. Or perhaps your aspirations were simpler: a day without backache, a meal of fresh bread and honey, a cool breeze on a hot afternoon. The stories that circulated among the servants spoke of those who had achieved remarkable fates. There were tales of servant girls who had caught the pharaoh's eye and been elevated to minor wives or concubines, living lives of luxury beyond imagination. Other stories told of servants who had saved enough of their small wages to purchase their freedom, setting up as small merchants or farmers. These tales, whether true or embellished, provided hope and entertainment during the long hours of labor. The palace workshops where you might have labored were marvels of organization and skill. In the textile workshop, dozens of women worked at different stages of linen production, from spinning the flax fibers to weaving the finest cloth that would clothe gods and kings. The air was filled with the rhythmic sound of spindles and looms, punctuated by the occasional song or conversation in low voices. In the perfume workshop, precious resins and oils were blended to create the fragrances that scented the royal chambers and the bodies of the royal family. Frankincense from the mysterious land of Punt, myrrh from the southern deserts, rose petals from the palace gardens. All were combined with the skill of master perfumers, whose knowledge was passed down through generations. The jewelry workshops gleamed with gold and precious stones, where craftsmen created the magnificent ornaments that adorned the royal family. As a servant here, you might help sort beads by size and color, or assist in the delicate work of stringing necklaces and bracelets. The beauty of these objects was breathtaking, each piece a work of art that would last for millennia. Your sleeping arrangements in the servants' quarters fostered a sense of community born of necessity. Privacy was unknown. You slept on reed mats laid directly on the mud brick floor, with perhaps a linen sheet if you were fortunate. Personal possessions were few and carefully guarded. Perhaps a bronze mirror, a comb made of wood or ivory, a small amulet for protection, and the simple jewelry that marked your status as a palace servant. The medical care available to you, while not as elaborate as that provided to royalty, was still sophisticated by ancient standards. Palace physicians understood the importance of keeping their servants healthy, as sick workers could not perform their duties effectively. Remedies made from herbs and minerals treated common ailments, while more serious conditions might be addressed through minor surgical procedures or magical incantations designed to appease the gods who controlled health and illness. The educational opportunities available to some servants were remarkable for the ancient world. If you showed aptitude and caught the attention of the scribes who managed palace records, you might be taught to read and write hieroglyphic script. This skill could transform your position entirely, elevating you from manual labor to administrative work, with all the increased status and privileges that entailed. Your understanding of the divine nature of the Pharaoh shaped every aspect of your service. This was not merely a powerful human being you served, but a god in mortal form, the link between the earthly realm and the eternal world of the gods. Every cup of water you brought, every garment you cleaned, every room you swept was part of maintaining the divine order that kept Egypt prosperous and protected. The seasonal festivals that marked the Egyptian religious calendar provided rhythm and meaning to your otherwise routine existence. During the festival of the Nile flood, you might participate in ceremonies thanking the gods for the life-giving waters that made Egypt fertile. The celebration of the pharaoh's birthday was marked by special feasts and the distribution of extra rations to the palace staff. As the years passed and your body bore the accumulated weight of constant labor, you might find yourself moved to lighter duties. Perhaps you would be assigned to care for the children of other servants or to help with the simpler tasks in the palace workshops. Your experience and knowledge made you valuable even as your physical strength waned. The stories you would tell in the servants' quarters during the brief evening hours painted pictures of a world beyond the palace walls. Tales of the Great Pyramids rising from the desert sands, of trading expeditions to exotic lands, of battles fought in distant countries to maintain Egypt's dominance. These stories, passed down from servant to servant, created a shared mythology that helped make sense of your place in the vast empire of Egypt. Your legacy, like that of countless other servants throughout history, would not be recorded in the grand hieroglyphic inscriptions that covered temple walls. No tomb would preserve your name for eternity. No statue would commemorate your service. Yet without your labor and that of thousands like you, the magnificent civilization of ancient Egypt could not have existed. The golden treasures in the pharaoh's tomb, the pristine linen that wrapped royal mummies, the elaborate feasts that impressed foreign dignitaries. All of these monuments to Egyptian greatness depended on the quiet, uncelebrated work of servants whose names have been lost to time, but whose contributions were essential to creating one of history's most remarkable civilizations. As we drift away from the banks of the ancient Nile and return to our own time, let us carry with us an appreciation for those forgotten lives, lived in service, but not without dignity, in hardship, but not without moments of beauty, in obscurity, but not without purpose. In the gentle rhythm of your breathing as sleep approaches, perhaps you can still hear the distant sound of the Nile lapping against ancient shores, and the whispered conversations of women whose dreams, fears, and hopes were not so different from our own. Boring history, your life as a female servant for a pharaoh. Part 2. The morning call to duty comes before Ra's chariot appears on the horizon, when the Nile still reflects the last stars like scattered diamonds on black water. You rise from your reed mat in the servants' quarters, a low mud brick building that houses dozens of women like yourself, all bound to serve the divine household of the pharaoh. The air is already thick with the scent of incense and baking bread, the eternal rhythms of palace life beginning anew. Your hands, once soft from your village upbringing, now bear the calluses of constant service. They know the weight of copper vessels filled with sacred water, the precise pressure needed to grind coal to perfect smoothness, the gentle touch required when dressing the goddess queen's hair. Every movement has been practiced 1,000 times until it flows like the Nile itself, natural and unthinking. The hierarchy among servants is as rigid as the stone columns that support the great halls. At the bottom are the field workers and kitchen helpers, their skin darkened by sun and fire. Above them stand the house servants who tend to cleaning and basic maintenance. You occupy a middle position as a personal attendant, higher than those who scrub floors, but lower than the trusted few who handle the pharaoh's most sacred possessions. At the apex are the chief servants, some born into noble families but fallen from grace, others elevated through years of exceptional service and unwavering loyalty. Your daily routine begins in the pre-dawn darkness with purification rituals. Every servant must cleanse themselves before entering the sacred spaces where the God-King dwells. You wash your hands and feet in the lotus-scented water, rinse your mouth with natron solution, and don the simple white linen garment that marks your station. The fabric is clean but coarse, a far cry from the gossamer fine linens that clothe your divine masters, yet it represents a privilege your village sisters could never imagine. The walk through the palace corridors never loses its power to awe. Painted walls tell stories of conquest and divine favor, their colors so vivid they seem to pulse with life in the flickering torchlight. Golden cartouches bearing the pharaoh's names catch and throw back the light like captured sunbeams. The very air seems charged with divinity, heavy with the smoke of frankincense and myrrh that burns constantly in the sacred chambers. Your first duty is attending to the Queen's morning ablutions, a ritual so sacred that only the most trusted servants are permitted to witness it. The royal bathroom is a marvel of engineering and artistry. Limestone floors inlaid with precious stones surround a sunken bath carved from a single block of red granite. Gold fixtures shaped like lotus blossoms control the flow of water that has been carried from the sacred spring of Elephantine, blessed by priests and scented with oils from distant lands. As the Queen enters, you and 3 other attendants move in practice synchronization. One tests the water temperature with her elbow, another prepares the cleansing oils, while you ready the soft sea sponges that will caress the divine skin. The Queen herself seems like a living goddess, her skin painted with gold dust that catches the light from oil lamps shaped like sacred falcons. Her eyes are already lined with kohl mixed with powdered lapis lazuli, creating an otherworldly blue-black that makes her gaze seem to pierce the veil between earth and heaven. The bathing ritual follows patterns as old as the kingdom itself. First, the purification with sacred water blessed by the priests of Thoth. The Queen raises her arms skyward as you pour the lustral water over her shoulders, washing away the spiritual contamination that accumulates even on divine beings who must walk in the mortal world. Next comes the cleansing with natron soap, its sharp alkaline scent clearing the air as you work the lather across her skin with gentle, circular motions. The oils come last, each one chosen for its magical as well as cosmetic properties. Moringa oil from the far south to preserve eternal youth, cedar oil from the Lebanon mountains to grant wisdom, sweet almond oil from the Mediterranean shores to ensure fertility and abundance. As you massage these precious unguents into the royal skin, you can feel their power flowing through your fingers, connecting you to the divine essence that flows through all creation. After the bath comes the elaborate process of dressing the goddess queen. The undergarments are made of linen so fine it seems woven from moonbeams, transparent enough to reveal the divine form while maintaining the mystery that surrounds true royalty. Over this goes the pleated dress, its folds arranged according to sacred geometry that mirrors the harmony of the cosmos. Each pleat must fall precisely, creating shadows and highlights that enhance the Queen's divine radiance. The jewelry requires even greater care and knowledge. Each piece is not merely ornamental, but serves as a conduit for divine power. The golden collar, shaped like a falcon's wings, must be positioned to align with the Queen's heartbeat, its precious stones corresponding to the 7 sacred stars of the northern sky. The bracelets bear hieroglyphs that spell out protective formulas, their placement on the arms creating a magical barrier against evil influences. The diadem itself houses the sacred uraeus, the cobra goddess, who strikes down the Pharaoh's enemies with her fiery breath. Your hands shake slightly as you position each element, knowing that a single mistake could be interpreted as an omen of divine displeasure. The other servants watch your work with mixture of admiration and envy, understanding that your proximity to the queen's person grants you a reflected glory that elevates your status throughout the palace. Yet with that privilege comes responsibility that weighs heavier than all the gold adorning the royal form. The queen's cosmetics represent the pinnacle of your artistic skill. The eye paint alone requires the grinding of malachite and galena into powders finer than silk, mixed with oils and gums to create colors that will remain perfect throughout the long day of ceremonies and audiences. The application demands steady hands and perfect vision, creating the distinctive eye decoration that transforms a mortal woman into the living image of Isis herself. The kohl lines must extend beyond the natural eye shape, reaching toward the temples in imitation of the sacred falcon's markings. Within these lines, you apply the green and blue pigments in patterns that tell stories of divine protection and cosmic harmony. Gold dust highlights the inner corners, making the eyes seem to blaze within a fire. The eyebrows are shaped and darkened to create perfect arches that mirror the curve of the sacred boats that carry the gods across the heavenly waters. The final touch is the application of perfume, each scent chosen for its spiritual significance as much as its pleasing aroma. Frankincense to connect the queen with the realm of the gods, myrrh to ensure her words carry divine authority, rose oil to maintain her connection to the goddess of love and beauty. As you dab these precious essences on the pulse points of wrists, throat, and temples, you whisper the protective formulas taught to you by the older servants, adding your own prayers for the continued favor of the gods. Once the queen is prepared for her public appearances, your duties shift to maintaining her private chambers. These rooms represent a perfection of luxury that makes the finest houses in Memphis seem like peasant hovels. The walls are covered with paintings that seem to move in the shifting light, depicting gardens where every flower blooms eternally and waters that never cease to flow. The furniture is crafted from ebony and ivory, inlaid with precious metals and stones that create patterns of mystical significance. The bed itself is a masterwork of the royal craftsmen, its frame shaped like a sacred barge that will carry the queen safely through the dangerous waters of sleep to the dawn of each new day. The mattress is stuffed with the finest goose down, covered with sheets of linen so perfectly woven that they feel like liquid silk beneath the skin. The headrest, carved from a single piece of blue-veined calcite, is positioned to align the royal head with the northern stars, ensuring that divine wisdom flows into the sleeping mind. Maintaining these chambers requires knowledge that goes far beyond simple cleaning. Each object must be positioned according to sacred principles, creating harmonious relationships between the earthly furniture and the cosmic forces that govern all existence. The mirror of polished silver must face east to catch the first rays of Ra's chariot. The cosmetic boxes must be arranged in patterns that mirror the constellation of the Great Bear. Even the placement of the water jars follows astronomical principles, ensuring that the room itself becomes a temple where heaven and earth meet. Your cleaning supplies are themselves touched with divinity. The water comes from sacred springs, blessed by priests and charged with the power of the gods. The cloths are woven from flax grown in temple fields, every thread consecrated to the service of the divine household. The oils used to polish the furniture contain essences that not only preserve the wood, but also maintain the spiritual purity of the space. As you work, you become aware of the subtle energies that flow through the royal chambers. The very air seems alive with power, charged by the presence of divinity that permeates every surface the queen has touched. Sometimes you feel as though you can see the traces of golden light that linger where she has walked, the invisible threads that connect her to the realm of the gods. The palace gardens represent another world entirely, a carefully cultivated paradise that mirrors the eternal fields where the blessed dead spend their afterlife. Here, your duties involve tending plants that exist nowhere else in the mortal world, species brought from the furthest reaches of the empire and beyond, trees from the mysterious land of Punt, their resin weeping precious tears that will become incense for the temple altars, flowers from the southern kingdoms, their blooms shaped like sacred symbols, and their scents capable of inducing prophetic visions. The irrigation system that keeps these gardens flourishing is itself a marvel of engineering and magic. Channels carved from stone and lined with silver carry water from the sacred Nile, their course designed to create the sound of flowing water that soothes the royal ear and masks conversations from potential eavesdroppers. Fountains shaped like lotus blossoms spray perfumed mist into the air, cooling the atmosphere and filling it with fragrances that are said to be pleasing to the gods. Your knowledge of plants and their properties grows daily as you work alongside the master gardeners. You learn which flowers must be picked at dawn to retain their magical potency, which fruits must be harvested under specific phases of the moon, which herbs can heal and which can kill with equal efficiency. This knowledge makes you valuable beyond your basic serving duties, as the Queen herself sometimes seeks your advice on matters of herbal medicine and magical practice. The responsibility weighs heavily upon you, knowing that a mistake in your botanical knowledge could have consequences far beyond a wilted flower or bitter fruit. The plants in the royal garden are not merely decorative, but serve as ingredients for medicines, cosmetics, and magical preparations that protect the pharaoh and his family from the countless dangers that threaten divine rulers. A poisonous leaf mistaken for a healing herb could topple dynasties and plunge the kingdom into chaos. Working in the palace kitchens introduces you to culinary arts that transform simple ingredients into feasts worthy of the gods themselves. The royal cooks are masters of their craft, capable of creating dishes that please not only the palate, but also serve magical and medicinal purposes. Every meal is planned according to astrological principles, with specific foods chosen to enhance the pharaoh's divine nature and protect him from earthly ailments. The ingredients available to the royal kitchen would seem like fantasy to the common people of Egypt. Honey from sacred bees that feed only on temple flowers. Salt harvested from lakes in the deepest desert, where it has been purified by the burning sun and blessed by the gods of the wasteland. Spices carried by caravan from lands so distant their names are whispered like incantations. Meats from animals raised in temple herds, their lives consecrated to divine service from birth to sacrifice. Your role in the kitchen involves preparing these precious ingredients with the reverence they deserve, grinding spices in mortars carved from sacred stones, their surfaces blessed by priests and charged with divine energy. Mixing doughs with water drawn from holy wells, each drop carrying the power of the gods who dwell beneath the earth. Even the fire that cooks the royal food is kindled with woods chosen for their spiritual properties, creating flames that purify as they heat. The dining rituals of the royal household follow patterns established by the gods themselves in the first days of creation. Each dish must be presented in vessels of gold and silver, their surfaces engraved with protective hieroglyphs that ensure the food remains pure and nourishing. The arrangement of the feast follows cosmic principles, with dishes positioned to mirror the movement of stars across the heavenly vault. As you serve these divine meals, you become part of a ceremony that connects the earthly realm with the eternal kingdom of the gods. The pharaoh's act of eating is itself a sacred ritual, transforming mortal food into divine essence that sustains his supernatural nature. Every bite he takes strengthens his connection to the gods. Every sip of wine enhances his ability to channel divine will into earthly action. The palace workshops where royal garments are created represent the pinnacle of human artistry in service to the divine. Here, master weavers create fabrics so fine they seem spun from light itself, their threads dyed with colours that capture the essence of precious stones. The royal wardrobe contains garments for every occasion and ceremony, each piece designed not merely to clothe the divine body, but to enhance and focus the supernatural powers that flow through it. Your duties in the workshop involve preparing the materials that will become these magnificent creations, sorting flax fibers according to their fineness, separating the gossamer strands that will become the pharaoh's undergarments from the stronger threads used for outer robes, preparing dyes from rare minerals and exotic plants, grinding lapis lazuli into powder that will colour the sacred blue of royal ceremonies, extracting crimson from insects that live only in the remotest deserts. The weaving itself is a form of prayer, each pass of the shuttle creating patterns that tell stories of divine power and cosmic harmony. The royal weavers work in silence, their concentration absolute as they create fabrics that must be perfect in every thread. A single flaw could be interpreted as an omen of divine displeasure, potentially affecting the prosperity of the entire kingdom. The finished garments are works of art that transcend mere clothing, becoming vessels for divine power and symbols of the pharaoh's unique position between heaven and earth. Robes embroidered with gold thread that traces the movements of celestial bodies. Cloaks lined with fur from animals that exist only in the realm of the gods. Sandals crafted from leather, so supple it feels like silk, their soles inlaid with precious stones that connect the wearer to the sacred power of the earth itself. Your evening duties bring a different kind of intimacy to your service, as you help prepare the royal family for the dangerous journey through the hours of darkness. In ancient Egyptian belief, night is a time when the forces of chaos grow strong, when the serpent Apophis threatens to devour the sun god and plunge the world into eternal darkness. The pharaoh, as the earthly representative of Ra, must be protected through these perilous hours by every magical means available. The bedtime rituals begin with the lighting of sacred lamps that will burn throughout the night, their flames fed by oils blessed by the priests and scented with substances that repel evil spirits. The wicks are made from the finest linen, woven by temple virgins whose purity ensures that the light remains spiritually clean. The arrangement of these lamps follows patterns that mirror the protective constellations, creating a circle of divine light around the sleeping pharaoh. The preparation of the royal bedchamber involves rituals that would seem like magic to those unfamiliar with the sacred sciences. Incense burners are positioned at the 4 cardinal points, their smoke carrying prayers to the gods who guard the quarters of the earth. Amulets of gold and precious stones are placed beneath the bed, their magical properties creating an invisible barrier against the demons that prowl the night. Even the bedding itself is arranged according to sacred principles, with pillows positioned to align the royal head with protective stars. Your role in these nighttime preparations requires knowledge of magical practices that have been passed down through generations of royal servants. You learn the proper words to speak while arranging the protective amulets, the correct gestures to make while lighting the sacred lamps, the precise timing needed to ensure that all preparations are complete before the dangerous hours of deepest night begin. As you work in the flickering lamplight, you become acutely aware of the spiritual forces that surround the royal household. The very air seems thick with invisible presences, some benevolent and others hostile, all drawn by the concentration of divine power that radiates from the pharaoh's presence. Your actions help maintain the delicate balance that keeps the forces of chaos at bay, ensuring that the sun god can complete his nightly journey and rise again with the dawn. The seasonal cycles that govern life along the Nile also dictate the rhythms of palace service, as different times of year require different rituals and preparations. During the inundation season, when the great river floods the land with life-giving water, the palace becomes a center of thanksgiving ceremonies that celebrate the renewal of the world. Your duties expand to include preparing offerings for the flood gods, arranging flowers and fruits in patterns that mirror the swirling waters, and helping to maintain the sacred pools where priests perform rituals to ensure the continued favor of the Nile deities. The growing season brings its own challenges and opportunities, as the palace gardens burst into bloom, and the royal household prepares for the great festivals that mark the agricultural year. You learn to identify the subtle signs that indicate when specific plants have reached their peak magical potency, when certain flowers must be harvested for use in religious ceremonies, when particular fruits are ready to grace the pharaoh's table. Harvest time transforms the palace into a hub of activity as tribute flows in from every corner of the kingdom. Your organizational skills are tested as you help catalog and store the countless gifts that arrive daily. Gold from the southern mines, precious stones from the eastern deserts, exotic woods from the mysterious lands beyond the cataracts. Each item must be properly preserved and protected, as they will be used throughout the year in ceremonies and rituals that maintain the cosmic order. The relationships between servants create a complex social network that mirrors the larger hierarchies of Egyptian society. Friendships form along lines of shared origin, common duties, and mutual protection, as those who serve together often face similar challenges and dangers. You develop close bonds with other personal attendants, sharing knowledge and offering support during the difficult moments that inevitably arise in palace service. Yet competition also exists, as advancement within the servant hierarchy can mean the difference between a life of relative comfort and one of grinding hardship. Those who show exceptional skill, loyalty, and discretion may be promoted to positions of greater responsibility and privilege, while those who fail in their duties may find themselves demoted to the lowest ranks of palace service, or even expelled entirely from the royal household. The threat of punishment looms constantly over palace life, as the consequences of failure in royal service can be severe beyond imagination. A servant who breaks a precious object, reveals palace secrets, or shows disrespect to the royal family faces penalties that range from physical beatings to exile or even death. The knowledge that your life depends on perfect performance creates a constant state of tension that affects every aspect of daily existence. Yet for those who excel in their service, opportunities for advancement and reward do exist. Exceptional servants may be granted their freedom, given land and possessions, or even elevated to positions of authority over other workers. Some fortunate few may catch the attention of the royal family themselves, becoming trusted confidants whose advice influences the decisions that shape the kingdom's destiny. The educational opportunities available to palace servants represent privileges unknown to the vast majority of Egypt's population. Through daily contact with the literate members of the royal household, you gradually absorb knowledge of reading and writing, mathematical calculation, and the complex religious and magical traditions that govern Egyptian civilization. This learning transforms you from a simple village girl into a sophisticated woman capable of understanding and participating in the highest levels of cultural achievement. The scribal schools attached to the palace offer formal instruction to promising servants, teaching the hieroglyphic writing system that serves as the foundation of Egyptian learning. The ability to read and write opens doors to advancement that would otherwise remain forever closed, as literate servants can be entrusted with maintaining records, copying important documents, and communicating with officials throughout the kingdom. Mathematical knowledge proves equally valuable, as the complex calculations required for managing palace resources, planning construction projects, and organizing religious festivals demand numerical skills that few possess. Your growing expertise in these areas makes you increasingly valuable to the palace administration, creating opportunities for advancement that your village origins could never have provided. Religious and magical education represents perhaps the most profound transformation in your understanding of the world. Through exposure to the priests and learned officials who frequent the palace, you gain insight into the cosmic forces that govern existence, the proper rituals needed to maintain harmony between heaven and earth, and the magical practices that protect the Pharaoh and his kingdom from supernatural threats. The gradual accumulation of this knowledge changes not only your practical abilities, but also your understanding of your place in the cosmic order. You begin to see yourself not merely as a servant performing mundane tasks, but as a participant in the great work of maintaining the divine order that keeps chaos at bay. Your daily duties become forms of worship. Your careful attention to detail are offering to the gods who protect Egypt and its divine rulers. As months turn to years and your experience deepens, you develop an appreciation for the intricate beauty of palace life that goes beyond its obvious material splendor. The coordination required to maintain the royal household becomes a form of art in itself, with hundreds of servants working in harmony to create an environment worthy of the gods who walk among mortals. Your role in this great symphony of service gives meaning and dignity to even the most humble tasks. The changing seasons bring variety to your duties, preventing the boredom that might otherwise accompany repetitive work. Spring festivals require the preparation of floral decorations that transform the palace into a garden paradise. Summer ceremonies demand the creation of cooling arrangements that provide relief from the intense heat. Autumn celebrations involve the organization of harvest displays that showcase the kingdom's abundance. Winter rituals require the maintenance of warming fires and protective barriers against the dangerous forces of the dark season. Your growing expertise in palace procedures makes you a valuable mentor to newer servants, passing on the knowledge and skills that were once taught to you by more experienced workers. This teaching role provides satisfaction that goes beyond personal advancement, as you help others navigate the complex demands of royal service and find their own paths to success within the palace hierarchy. The relationships you form with the royal family members themselves remain distant but meaningful, as your faithful service earns their recognition and occasional expressions of approval, a nod of acknowledgement from the Queen, a word of praise from a royal prince, or a small gift in recognition of exceptional service, become treasured memories that validate your dedication and skill. The spiritual dimension of your service deepens with experience, as you come to understand that your work serves purposes far greater than the immediate comfort of the royal family. Through your careful attention to ritual details, your maintenance of sacred spaces, and your participation in religious ceremonies, you help maintain the cosmic order that protects not only the Pharaoh, but all the people of Egypt. The knowledge that your individual efforts contribute to the welfare of the entire kingdom provides a sense of purpose that transcends personal ambition. You are no longer simply a village girl seeking to improve her circumstances, but a guardian of the divine order, a protector of the sacred traditions that have sustained Egyptian civilization for countless generations. The palace becomes not merely your workplace, but your world, a microcosm of the universe where heaven and earth meet in perfect harmony. The daily routines that once seemed overwhelming now flow as naturally as the Nile itself, each task performed with the unconscious grace that comes from years of dedicated practice. You have become part of something larger than yourself, a living element in the great pattern that connects all things in the eternal dance of creation. As night falls and you complete your final duties of the day, you take a moment to appreciate the privilege of your position. Despite its demands and dangers, service in the Pharaoh's household has transformed you from a provincial girl into a sophisticated woman, knowledgeable in arts and sciences that remain mysteries to most of your contemporaries. You have touched the divine, served the gods themselves, and played your part in maintaining the cosmic order that keeps the world in balance. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and opportunities, new chances to demonstrate your skill and dedication in service to the divine household. But tonight, as you retire to your simple bed in the servants' quarters, you carry with you the satisfaction of knowing that your life has meaning and purpose, beyond anything you could have imagined in your village home beside the great river that gives life to all Egypt. Here's part 3 of the script for Boring History: Your life as a female servant for a pharaoh. As the weeks turned to months in your service, you began to notice the intricate rhythms that governed palace life. The changing seasons dictated not only the ceremonial calendar, but also the very foods that graced the royal tables. During the season of Akhet, when the Nile's sacred waters rose to blanket the land in life-giving silt, you learned to prepare dishes celebrating renewal and abundance. Tender young vegetables, fresh fish from the flooded fields, and the first fruits of the season were arranged with meticulous care according to ancient prescriptions. Your hands grew skilled at identifying the ripeness of dates by touch alone, at selecting the perfect lotus buds for the queen's morning bath, at grinding precious spices imported from distant Nubia and the mysterious lands beyond the Great Cataracts. Each task was performed not merely as labor, but as an offering to the divine order that kept Ma'at in balance. The kitchen servants taught you that even the humblest meal preparation was a sacred act, for the pharaoh's body was the vessel of divine power, and what nourished him sustained all of Egypt. The palace kitchens were a world unto themselves, vast chambers filled with the constant bustle of dozens of servants working in perfect coordination. Massive clay ovens glowed like miniature suns, tended by sweating bakers who shaped loaves into forms pleasing to the gods. Beer brewers sang ancient working songs as they stirred their vats, their melodies timing the fermentation that would produce the liquid bread sustaining nobles and servants alike. The air hung thick with aromatic smoke from roasting fowl, the sweet scent of honey cakes baking, and the sharp tang of fermenting fruit wines. You learned that even the arrangement of food carried profound meaning. Bread was shaped into the forms of sacred animals, with duck-shaped loaves representing the soul's journey through the afterlife, and fish-shaped offerings invoking the protective power of the Nile. Fruits were arranged according to color correspondences that honored different deities, with golden persimmons dedicated to Ra, deep red pomegranates to fierce Sekhmet, and green grapes to Osiris, his aspect as Lord of Vegetation and Rebirth. Your education in palace ways extended far beyond the practical arts of food preparation and chamber maintenance. The head of your dormitory, an elderly woman named Nebet, who had served 3 pharaohs, began teaching you and the other young servants the basics of hieroglyphic writing. In the flickering lamplight of evening hours, you traced the sacred symbols onto broken pottery shards, learning to write your name and simple prayers. This knowledge was precious beyond measure, for literacy was the key to advancement within the palace hierarchy. Nebet explained that servants who could read and write might eventually be promoted to positions of greater responsibility, perhaps even becoming scribes or administrators. She spoke of former servant girls who had learned their letters well enough to become tutors to royal children, or who had married minor officials and secured comfortable positions for their families. The possibility of such advancement filled you with determination, and you practiced your writing by lamplight until your eyes burned and your fingers cramped. The palace library was a repository of wisdom that made your village shrine seem humble indeed. Scrolls of papyrus-lined cedar shelves, containing everything from medical treatises to astronomical calculations to the sacred hymns sung at dawn, to welcome Ray's solar bark across the sky. As your literacy improved, you were occasionally sent to fetch specific scrolls for palace officials, and you marveled at the knowledge contained within those chambers. Maps showed the extent of Egypt's dominion, from the Mediterranean marshes in the north to the gold mines of Nubia in the south. The royal workshops produced objects of such beauty and craftsmanship that they seemed touched by divine hands. You watched master artisans carve intricate reliefs into limestone blocks that would adorn temple walls, their chisels bringing life to images of gods and pharaohs that would endure for millennia. Jewelers worked with gold and precious stones, creating amulets and ornaments that served both as adornment and magical protection. The palace metalworkers forged weapons and tools from bronze and copper, their furnaces roaring like captive dragons. Your duties occasionally brought you into contact with foreign visitors and diplomats, and you began to understand the vast network of trade and politics that centered on the pharaoh's court. Nubian princes arrived with gifts of gold, ivory, and exotic animals, their dark skin gleaming with precious oils and their retinues spectacular in feathered headdresses and leopard skin cloaks. Asiatic merchants brought cedar wood from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from distant Afghanistan, and silver from the mysterious lands beyond the Great Eastern Desert. The protocol surrounding these diplomatic encounters was elaborate beyond imagining. Every gift had to be received according to ancient custom. Every gesture carefully choreographed to maintain Egypt's position as the greatest power in the known world. You learned that even your presence as a servant carried symbolic weight, for the number and quality of servants attending a ceremony communicated the pharaoh's power and prosperity to foreign eyes. The seasonal festivals that punctuated the calendar were opportunities for the entire palace community to participate in the cosmic drama of death and renewal that governed Egyptian life. During the Opet festival, when the god Amun journeyed from Karnak to Luxor Temple, the palace became a staging ground for magnificent processions. You helped prepare the elaborate costumes worn by priests and officials, learning that every color, every ornament, every piece of regalia carried specific religious significance. The festival of the Nile flood was perhaps the most important celebration of all, for upon the river's annual rise depended the prosperity of the entire kingdom. You participated in ceremonies welcoming the sacred waters, carrying offerings of bread and beer to be cast into the current as prayers for a bountiful harvest. The joy and relief that accompanied a good flood permeated the entire palace, while years of low water brought tension and anxiety that affected everyone from the pharaoh to the humblest kitchen servant. Your understanding of palace hierarchy deepened as you observed the complex relationships between different groups of servants and officials. The scribes looked down upon the manual laborers, but they in turn deferred to the priests who controlled access to divine knowledge. Military officers commanded respect through their proximity to the pharaoh's power, but even they showed deference to the ancient noble families whose bloodlines traced back to the earliest dynasties. Women's roles within this hierarchy were particularly nuanced. While female servants like yourself occupied the lowest rungs of palace society, women of noble birth could wield considerable influence as queens, priestesses, and royal relatives. You learned that some queens had ruled Egypt as pharaohs in their own right, and that the position of God's wife of Amun, held by royal daughters, carried tremendous religious and political authority. The daily routine of palace life followed rhythms as ancient and predictable as the stars themselves. Dawn brought the ceremonies awakening the pharaoh and the gods, with priests performing the morning rituals that renewed the cosmic order for another day. The midday hours were devoted to administration and audiences, as officials reported on provincial matters and foreign ambassadors sought the pharaoh's favor. Evening brought elaborate feasts and entertainment, with musicians, dancers, and storytellers performing for the royal court. Your own schedule adapted to these rhythms as you learned to anticipate the needs of your superiors and the requirements of different ceremonies. The preparation of the royal bath alone required coordinating the work of dozens of servants, from those who heated and scented the water to those who prepared the elaborate array of oils, perfumes, and cosmetics used in the daily transformation of mortal flesh into divine radiance. The palace's connection to the broader rhythms of Egyptian society became apparent during times of crisis or celebration that affected the entire kingdom. When news arrived of military victories in distant lands, the palace erupted in festivities that lasted for days, with extra rations distributed to all servants and elaborate Thanksgiving ceremonies performed in the royal temples. Conversely, reports of crop failures or enemy incursions brought somber moods and increased religious observances as the court sought divine favor through prayer and sacrifice. Your growing familiarity with palace customs allowed you to appreciate the subtle communications that occurred through gesture, dress, and ceremonial behavior. The way a noble arranged their jewelry conveyed messages about their political allegiances. The selection of specific perfumes for different occasions honored particular deities while invoking their protection. Even the manner of serving food carried significance, with certain dishes presented only on specific types of vessels and in prescribed orders that maintained harmony with cosmic principles. The accumulation of all this knowledge began to transform your sense of identity and purpose. No longer were you simply a village girl who had been brought to serve in the palace. You were becoming a keeper of ancient traditions, a participant in the great cosmic drama that sustained Egyptian civilization. Your literacy, your understanding of palace customs, your growing expertise in the sacred arts of service, all marked you as someone who had transcended the circumstances of your birth to become something greater. The bonds you formed with your fellow servants grew stronger as you shared the challenges and rewards of palace life. Together you faced the demanding expectations of your superiors, the physical exhaustion of long days filled with manual labor, and the emotional strain of homesickness and uncertainty about the future. But you also shared in the pride of serving the divine Pharoh, the excitement of participating in great ceremonies, and the satisfaction of mastering skills that connected you to the eternal traditions of Egypt. Your dormitory became a place of learning and mutual support, where older servants shared their wisdom with newcomers and where friendships formed that would last lifetimes. In the evening hours, when the day's work was done, you would sit together mending clothes, practicing writing, or listening to stories told by those who had served in the palace for decades. These tales of past pharaohs, great ceremonies, and palace intrigues became part of your own growing store of knowledge about the royal court. The changing seasons brought variety to your routine as different festivals, agricultural cycles, and administrative requirements shaped the rhythm of palace life. The flood season was a time of thanksgiving and celebration, when the Nile's gift of fertile silt promised abundant harvests, and the Pharaoh's divine power was most visibly manifest in the prosperity of the land. The growing season brought ceremonies blessing the crops and prayers for favorable weather, while the harvest season culminated in festivals of gratitude to the gods who had blessed Egypt with another year of plenty. Your role in these seasonal observances grew more significant as your knowledge and skills developed. You learned to assist in the preparation of special foods associated with different festivals, to help arrange the elaborate decorations that transformed palace chambers for ceremonial occasions, and to participate in the complex choreography of processions and religious observances that marked the turning of the sacred calendar. The palace's vast storage areas contained the accumulated wealth of generations, and your duties occasionally brought you into these treasure-filled chambers. You marveled at rooms filled with golden vessels, precious stones, and exotic materials gathered from the farthest reaches of the known world. These treasures represented not merely wealth, but the pharaoh's power to command the resources of distant lands and the devotion of his subjects, who contributed to the royal splendor through taxes and tribute. As your first year of service drew to a close, you reflected on the transformation that had occurred in your understanding of the world and your place within it. The village life that had once seemed complete and sufficient now appeared narrow and limited in comparison to the vast horizons opened by your palace service. You had learned that Egypt was but one kingdom among many, that the world extended far beyond the familiar boundaries of the Nile Valley, and that the pharaoh's power reached into distant lands whose very existence you had never imagined. Your own horizons had expanded immeasurably through literacy, through exposure to palace customs and traditions, and through the daily experience of participating in ceremonies and observances that connected you to the cosmic order governing all existence. The skills you had acquired, the knowledge you had gained, and the relationships you had formed all contributed to a sense of purpose and belonging that transcended the humble circumstances of your birth and offered the possibility of a future filled with meaning and advancement within the divine order of Pharaoh's eternal realm. Looking at your script so far and the reference materials, I'll continue from where part 3 left off. Your script has covered the royal household hierarchy, daily routines, and spiritual significance of serving the pharaoh. Here's part 4. As the sacred duties of the day continue, you find yourself drawn deeper into the intricate web of palace life, where every gesture carries meaning and every task connects you to the divine order that governs all of Egypt. The afternoon brings a different rhythm to your service, one that reveals the more intimate aspects of your role as a female servant in the pharaoh's household. The preparation of the royal bath is perhaps one of the most sacred and secretive duties you might be called upon to perform. In the private chambers reserved for such rituals, you work alongside other trusted servants to prepare waters infused with precious oils and flower petals. The bathing ritual is not merely about cleanliness, but about spiritual purification and the maintenance of divine essence. Each element has been carefully chosen by the palace priests: lotus petals for rebirth, frankincense oil for protection, and water blessed by the temple priests at dawn. As you pour the warm, fragrant water into ornate bronze vessels, you're acutely aware that you're participating in a ceremony that connects the pharaoh to the gods themselves. The very act of bathing is seen as a daily renewal of divine power, and your hands help facilitate this sacred transformation. The silence in these chambers is profound, broken only by the gentle sound of water and whispered prayers. The complexity of your role becomes even more apparent during the preparation of royal meals. In the vast palace kitchens, you work under the watchful eye of master cooks who have served the royal family for decades. Every ingredient must be perfect, every dish prepared according to ancient recipes that have been passed down through generations of palace servants. You learn to identify the finest cuts of meat, the ripest fruits from the royal gardens, and the most aromatic spices that arrive from distant lands. But your involvement in meal preparation goes beyond simple cooking. You're trained to understand the symbolic significance of each dish. Bread shaped like sacred animals, fruits arranged to represent the eternal cycle of the Nile, wines that have been blessed by temple priests. Each element of the pharaoh's meal carries deep spiritual meaning. As you carefully arrange pomegranates and figs on golden platters, you're not just preparing food, but participating in a daily ritual that nourishes both body and soul. The afternoon also brings opportunities for learning that extend far beyond domestic duties. In quiet moments between your assigned tasks, you might find yourself in the palace scribal school, where servants are taught the basics of reading and writing. This education is both practical and profound. You need to understand written instructions for complex rituals, but you're also being inducted into the sacred world of hieroglyphic writing. Your fingers trace the ancient symbols on practiced papyrus, each character carrying the weight of thousands of years of tradition. You learn that writing itself is considered a gift from Thoth, the god of wisdom, and that every word you write connects you to the divine order. The scribes who teach you speak in hushed, reverent tones about the power of the written word, how it can preserve truth for eternity, and carry the pharaoh's commands across vast distances. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, your duties shift once again. The evening preparations require a different kind of precision and ceremony. You help prepare the royal apartments for the night, ensuring that every lamp is filled with the purest oil, every incense burner prepared with the correct blend of sacred resins. The pharaoh's sleeping chamber must be purified and protected, surrounded by amulets and symbols that will guard against evil spirits during the vulnerable hours of sleep. This is when you truly understand the weight of your responsibilities. You're not just maintaining a household, but safeguarding the divine vessel through which the gods rule Egypt. Every pillow you fluff, every curtain you adjust, every protective symbol you place contributes to the cosmic balance that keeps the kingdom prosperous and secure. The evening hours also bring some of your most cherished duties, the care of the royal children. If you're fortunate enough to be assigned to the nursery, you experience a different side of palace life. Here, away from the formal ceremonies and rigid protocols, you see glimpses of the human side of the royal family. You might rock a young prince to sleep with ancient lullabies, or help a princess practice her letters on a wax tablet. Yet even these tender moments are infused with significance. The royal children are not ordinary youngsters, but future pharaohs and queens, divine beings in training. Every game you play with them, every story you tell, every lesson you help them learn, is part of their preparation for their eventual role as gods on earth. You teach them about the gods and goddesses, about the sacred geography of Egypt, about the rituals and ceremonies that will one day be their responsibility to perform. As darkness falls and the palace settles into its nighttime rhythms, you participate in the final ceremonies of the day. Oil lamps are lit in a specific sequence. Prayers are offered to the protective deities of the night, and the palace is sealed against the chaos that the Egyptians believed emerged with darkness. You walk through corridors that seem to glow with divine presence, your footsteps echoing in spaces where gods and mortals intersect. Your day ends where it began, in prayer and contemplation, but now you carry with you the accumulated experiences of a day spent in service to divinity. You've touched sacred objects, prepared divine meals, helped maintain the cosmic order that keeps Egypt prosperous and secure. As you settle into your sleeping area alongside other servants, you reflect on the profound privilege of your position. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, new chances to grow in understanding and skill. You might be chosen for special training in temple rituals, or selected to accompany the royal family on ceremonial journeys. You might learn new aspects of palace protocol, or be entrusted with even more sacred responsibilities. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep in the heart of the pharaoh's palace, you know that you are exactly where you belong, serving as a vital link in the great chain of being that connects earth to heaven, mortal to divine, human to God. Looking at your script summary and the reference materials, here's part 5 of your 12-part YouTube script for Boring History: Your Life as a Female Servant for a Pharaoh. The midnight rituals were perhaps the most sacred and mysterious of all your duties as a female servant in the pharaoh's household. When the great palace fell silent and the last torch flickered in the corridors, your work was far from over. In fact, some would argue that your most important responsibilities were just beginning. As the moon reached its zenith, casting silver shadows across the stone floors, you would rise from your sleeping mat in the servants' quarters. The air was cool and still, filled with the faint scent of frankincense that seemed to permeate every corner of the royal residence. Your bare feet would pad silently along the familiar pathways, avoiding the creaking stones that might disturb the slumber of your superiors. The pharaoh's personal chambers were your destination, but not for any earthly purpose. Ancient Egyptian belief held that the soul of the pharaoh journeyed through the underworld each night, battling demons and navigating treacherous passages to ensure the sun would rise again. Your role was to maintain the sacred space during this nightly voyage, keeping vigil over the divine vessel that contained Egypt's living god. You would enter the antechamber with practiced reverence, where small oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls adorned with hieroglyphs. The paintings seemed to come alive in the flickering light, depicting the pharaoh's triumph over chaos and his eternal communion with the gods. Your first task was to replenish these sacred flames, ensuring that the darkness could never fully claim the royal quarters. The oil you used was not ordinary lamp oil, but a specially prepared mixture infused with sacred resins and blessed by the high priests. Each lamp required precise attention, the wick trimmed to a specific length, the flame burning at exactly the right intensity. Too bright, and you might disturb the pharaoh's spiritual journey. Too dim, and the protective barrier against malevolent spirits would weaken. Moving deeper into the chamber, you would approach the pharaoh's sleeping form with the utmost care. He lay upon a bed of cedar wood inlaid with gold and ivory, his body positioned to align with the cardinal directions. At his feet rested amulets of protection. At his head, small figurines of guardian deities. Your responsibility was to ensure these protective talismans remained undisturbed throughout the night. The incense burners positioned around the room required constant attention. The sacred smoke that rose from these vessels was believed to carry prayers to the gods and create a bridge between the earthly and divine realms. You would add pinches of myrrh, frankincense, and kyphi to keep the aromatic clouds flowing steadily. The recipes for these incense blends were ancient secrets, passed down through generations of temple servants and carefully guarded from those deemed unworthy. Perhaps most mysteriously, you were tasked with monitoring the pharaoh's breathing and occasional movements during sleep. The royal physicians had taught you to recognize the signs of a troubled spiritual journey. If the pharaoh's sleep became restless, if he spoke strange words, or his limbs moved in unusual patterns, you would need to perform specific rituals to ease his passage through the underworld. These rituals might involve quietly chanting protective spells you had memorized, repositioning certain amulets around the bed, or adding specific herbs to the incense burners. The knowledge required for these midnight duties elevated you above the common household servants. You were, in essence, a guardian of the divine spark that animated Egypt's god-king. The responsibility was both honor and burden. To fail in these duties could result in cosmic catastrophe. If the pharaoh's soul became lost in the underworld, the sun might not rise, the Nile might not flood, and all of Egypt could fall into chaos. The weight of this knowledge would settle on your shoulders like a heavy cloak as you maintained your silent vigil. During these long midnight hours, you might also encounter other members of the pharaoh's spiritual retinue. The royal dream interpreter would sometimes visit to observe the pharaoh's sleep patterns, taking notes on a papyrus scroll for later analysis. The chief physician might appear to check the balance of the sacred oils burning around the bed. High-ranking priestesses occasionally performed their own midnight rituals in adjacent chambers. Communication during these encounters was conducted entirely through hand signals and subtle gestures. Speaking aloud during the pharaoh's spiritual journey was considered dangerous, potentially calling unwanted attention from malevolent entities in the spirit realm. You had learned an intricate language of silent communication, where a slight nod could convey complex information about the pharaoh's condition or the status of the protective rituals. The chamber itself seemed to pulse with spiritual energy during these midnight hours. The painted eyes of gods on the walls appeared to watch your every movement. The golden surfaces caught and reflected the lamplight in patterns that seemed almost alive. Even the air felt different, charged with an otherworldly presence that made every breath feel significant. Your training for these duties had been extensive and secretive. Older servants had guided you through moonless nights, teaching you to navigate the palace in complete darkness. You learn to distinguish between different types of spiritual disturbances, to recognize the subtle signs that indicated whether the Pharaoh's journey was proceeding smoothly or encountering obstacles. The tools of your midnight trade were simple but sacred. A small bronze knife for trimming lamp wicks, blessed by the priests of Ptah. Measuring spoons carved from sacred wood for adding incense. Strips of the finest linen for adjusting the Pharaoh's bedding without direct contact. Each implement had been consecrated in temple ceremonies and was considered an extension of divine will. As the night wore on, you would record observations on small ostraca, pottery shards used for temporary notes, the Pharaoh's sleep position, the behavior of the flames, any unusual sounds or disturbances. These records would be collected each morning by the royal scribes and incorporated into the larger tapestry of omens and portents that guided state decisions. The most challenging moments came when the Pharaoh experienced what the priests called the dark hour, a period when his spiritual journey reached its most perilous phase. During these times, his breathing might become labored, his body might twitch or convulse slightly, and the very air in the chamber seemed to grow thick and oppressive. Your response to these episodes required both courage and precise execution. You would approach the bed with a special amulet, a small golden figure of the god Bez, protector against nightmares and evil spirits. Holding this talisman above the Pharaoh's forehead while reciting silent prayers, you would will the protective energies to shield your divine master from whatever spiritual dangers he faced. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, you might witness phenomena that defied earthly explanation. Shadows that moved independently of their casting objects. Sounds like distant voices speaking in ancient tongues. Cold drafts that seemed to carry whispers from the realm of the dead. These experiences were never discussed, even among the other midnight servants. They were simply accepted as part of the reality surrounding a being who existed simultaneously in the mortal and divine worlds. The pre-dawn hours brought their own unique responsibilities. As the Pharaoh's soul began its return journey from the underworld, you would need to prepare for his awakening. This involved a careful sequence of actions designed to ease the transition from divine communion back to earthly consciousness. The incense was gradually reduced, the lamp flames dimmed slightly, and certain protective amulets were quietly removed from their midnight positions. You would prepare the first offerings of the day, small portions of bread and beer that would help ground the Pharaoh's returned spirit in physical reality. The moment of awakening was always a crucial test of your skill and devotion. The Pharaoh must never wake to darkness or silence, as this could trap part of his soul in the underworld. As the first hint of dawn appeared on the horizon, you would begin the subtle process of increasing light and gentle sound that would guide the divine consciousness back to full earthly awareness. When the Pharaoh's eyes finally opened, your midnight vigil would end, but not before performing one final ritual. You would present yourself at the foot of the bed, hands clasped in a gesture of reverence, waiting for the slight nod that indicated the successful completion of another spiritual journey. Only then would you withdraw, your sacred duty fulfilled until the cycle began again with the setting sun. These midnight hours revealed the true nature of your service. You were not merely a servant tending to physical needs, but a guardian of cosmic order, a protector of the divine essence that maintained the balance between chaos and creation. In the silent darkness of the royal chambers, surrounded by the symbols of eternal power, you stood as a humble but essential link in the great chain of being that connected earth to heaven. The knowledge you gained during these nocturnal duties would shape your understanding of the sacred mysteries that governed Egyptian civilization. You witnessed firsthand the vulnerability and humanity of the Pharaoh, even as you participated in maintaining his divine nature. This paradox, the god who slept and dreamed like a mortal, was perhaps the most profound secret of palace life. As dawn broke over the Nile and the palace began to stir with the activities of another day, you would carry within yourself the memories of the night's sacred watch, the weight of cosmic responsibility, the intimacy of divine service, and the unshakable knowledge that your vigilance helped ensure the continued existence of the world itself. Here's the continuation of your script for part 6 of Boring History: Your life as a female servant for a pharaoh. The sacred ceremonies you've participated in throughout your service have prepared you for perhaps the most solemn duty of all: attending to the pharaoh during times of illness or distress. When the divine king falls ill, the entire palace holds its breath, for the well-being of Egypt itself hangs in the balance. You and your fellow servants become the guardians of sacred rituals designed to restore the pharaoh's health and maintain cosmic order. The healing chambers are sanctified spaces where medicine and magic intertwine. You carefully prepare the sacred oils infused with frankincense and myrrh, substances believed to carry the essence of the gods themselves. The palace physicians, learned men who study the ancient medical papyri, work alongside the priest to diagnose both physical ailments and spiritual imbalances. Your role is to ensure the ritual purity of everything that comes into contact with the pharaoh's divine form. You've learned to recognize the subtle signs that indicate when the pharaoh requires spiritual cleansing rather than physical medicine. Sometimes the ailment stems from cosmic disturbances, when the balance between order and chaos shifts precariously. During these times, you participate in elaborate purification ceremonies, burning sacred incense, while priests recite protective spells from the Book of the Dead. The preparation of medicinal compounds requires the same precision as preparing cosmetics, but with far graver consequences. You grind precious stones into powder, believing that lapis lazuli can cure headaches by channeling the power of the heavens, while ground carnelian might restore vitality to weakened limbs. Each ingredient must be gathered at specific times of day and blessed according to ancient protocols that have been passed down through generations of palace servants. Your understanding of the pharaoh's daily rhythms proves invaluable during these critical periods. You know exactly how he prefers his morning ablutions, which incense calms his spirit, and which foods provide both nourishment and symbolic protection. This intimate knowledge makes you indispensable to the healing process, as maintaining familiar routines helps stabilize both the pharaoh's physical health and the spiritual equilibrium of the kingdom. The royal physicians often consult with you about the pharaoh's habits and preferences, recognizing that servants who spend years in close proximity to the divine ruler possess insights that even learned doctors cannot match. You've observed how certain weather patterns affect his mood, which phases of the moon correspond to his periods of greatest energy, and how various political pressures manifest in physical symptoms. When the pharaoh's condition is particularly serious, the entire court mobilizes in a coordinated effort to restore divine balance. You join processions that wind through the palace corridors, carrying sacred amulets and chanting protective formulae. The weight of responsibility is immense, for everyone understands that the pharaoh's health directly impacts the Nile's floods, the success of harvests, and Egypt's protection from foreign enemies. The preparation of the pharaoh's sick room follows strict religious protocols that you've memorized through years of training. Sacred images of protective deities must be positioned at specific points around the bed, while magical texts are placed beneath the pillows to ward off malevolent spirits. You ensure that fresh lotus flowers are replaced daily, their sweet fragrance believed to attract benevolent gods who might aid in the healing process. Your fellow servants work in carefully coordinated shifts to maintain constant vigilance over the pharaoh's welfare. The senior servants, those who have served multiple pharaohs throughout their careers, share their knowledge of which remedies proved most effective in past crises. This oral tradition of healing wisdom becomes part of your expanding education, adding another layer to your understanding of palace life. The emotional toll of serving during the pharaoh's illness weighs heavily on everyone in the palace. The divine king's suffering affects the entire household, creating an atmosphere of anxious devotion as servants, officials, and priests unite in their efforts to restore his health. You find yourself praying more fervently than ever before, not only for the pharaoh's recovery, but for the stability of the world you've come to call home. During recovery periods, your role shifts to helping the pharaoh gradually resume his normal activities. You participate in thanksgiving ceremonies when his health improves, offering grateful prayers to the gods who answered the palace's collective petitions. These moments of relief and celebration strengthen the bonds between all who serve in the palace, creating a shared sense of purpose that transcends individual duties. The knowledge you gain from participating in the pharaoh's care extends far beyond medical procedures. You develop a deeper understanding of the delicate balance between the earthly and divine realms, learning how human frailty and divine power intersect in the person of the pharaoh. This wisdom makes you not just a more capable servant, but a guardian of ancient traditions that maintain the cosmic order upon which all of Egypt depends. The cycles of illness and recovery that you witness throughout your service teach you about the eternal rhythms that govern both individual lives and the fate of kingdoms. Each crisis overcome, each restoration of health achieved through divine intervention and human devotion reinforces your understanding of your vital role in maintaining the sacred balance that keeps Egypt prosperous and protected. You wake before dawn to the gentle chiming of bronze bells echoing through the palace corridors. The sound pierces through your dreams of distant villages and family faces you can barely remember now. Your body knows this rhythm as intimately as your own heartbeat. You have served in Pharaoh's household for 12 years, since you were barely 14 summers old. As you rise from your sleeping mat in the servants' quarters, the cool pre-dawn air kisses your skin. Around you, dozens of other women begin to stir. Some have been here longer than you, their movements practiced and efficient, while others are newer, still adjusting to the relentless precision required in the divine household. You reach for the linen dress that marks your station, its quality far superior to anything you knew in your village, yet simple compared to the golden threads that adorn your mistresses. The first ritual of every day is purification. You join the silent procession to the washing chambers, where servants pour cool water from sacred vessels over your hands and feet. This is not merely cleanliness, this is spiritual preparation. Every drop that touches your skin is blessed, for you are about to enter spaces where the living God dwells. The priests have taught you that even the humblest servant carries divine purpose, that your work maintains the cosmic order that keeps Egypt strong. Moving through the palace halls, your bare feet whisper against polished stone floors inlaid with precious metals. The walls around you tell stories in hieroglyphic script, tales of Pharaoh's victories, the gods' benevolence, the eternal cycle of life and death that governs all existence. You cannot read these sacred symbols, but their meaning flows through you nonetheless. You are part of this story, a thread in the great tapestry of divine rule. Your first duty takes you to the kitchens, where the preparation of Pharaoh's morning meal has already begun. The head cook, a stern woman named Kamwaset, directs the controlled chaos with sharp commands. You know your role without being told. Today, you will help prepare the sacred bread that will grace the royal table. The grain has been blessed by temple priests, the water drawn from the holiest wells, the salt gathered from lakes touched by the gods themselves. As you knead the dough, your hands remember the countless loaves you have shaped. Each one must be perfect, for imperfection in the divine household is not merely failure, it is sacrilege. The rhythm of kneading becomes a meditation, your breath syncing with the work, your mind clearing of all thoughts save the sacred task before you. Around you, Other servants grind spices that travelled from the far reaches of the empire, their aromas mixing into an intoxicating cloud that speaks of Pharaoh's dominion over distant lands. The bread baking, you move to your next responsibility, the preparation of the royal chambers. You have learned to read the subtle signs that indicate which rooms Pharaoh will favour today. A particular arrangement of furniture, the direction of morning light, the consultation of star charts by the court astronomers. All these inform where your attention must focus. In Pharaoh's primary chamber, you work alongside Nefertiti, an older servant who has become something like a mother to you. Together you change the linen sheets that are finer than silk, their threads woven by master craftsmen and blessed by temple priestesses. Every fold must be perfect, every corner sharp as a blade's edge. The mattress itself is stuffed with the down of sacred ibis birds, and you fluff it with careful reverence. The morning light streaming through high windows illuminates the chamber's magnificence. Walls painted with scenes of the afterlife, furniture inlaid with ebony and ivory, vessels of gold and silver that catch and throw back the sun's rays like captured starlight. You have grown accustomed to this beauty, yet it still takes your breath away. To think that you, a farmer's daughter from a village near Memphis, now tend to spaces more magnificent than the temples of your youth. As you work, Nefertiti shares whispered wisdom. "Remember, child," she murmurs as you together lift a heavy chest of cosmetics. "We are not merely servants. We are guardians of the divine order. Pharaoh's strength flows through every task we complete with devotion. Her words carry the weight of decades spent in royal service, and you absorb them like dry earth drinks the Nile's flood." Your next duty calls you to the wardrobe chambers, where Pharaoh's ceremonial garments await your attention. Each piece tells a story of divine authority: the golden pectoral that represents the sun's power, the cobra crown that speaks of protection and wisdom, the ceremonial kilt whose pleats must fall in exact mathematical precision. You have learned to handle these sacred garments with the same reverence you once reserved for holy statues in village temples. Today's selection requires special care, for Pharaoh will receive foreign ambassadors. You help lay out the regalia that will project Egypt's power to visitors from Nubia and the Levant. The gold collar alone weighs more than a newborn calf, its surface covered in hieroglyphs that proclaim Pharaoh's divine nature. As you polish each element to mirror brightness, you think of those distant peoples who will prostrate themselves before the living God your hands have helped prepare. The morning ritual of dressing Pharaoh is a ceremony unto itself. You stand with other servants in perfect formation as the royal body is anointed with oils blessed by high priests. Each servant has a specific role. One holds the sacred mirror, another manages the ceremonial sandals, a third arranges the false beard that symbolizes divine wisdom. Your task is to ensure the golden armbands sit precisely upon the royal forearms, their weight distributed to avoid discomfort during long audiences. The transformation you witness never fails to inspire awe. Before you stands not merely a man, but the living embodiment of divine will. The regalia doesn't simply adorn Pharaoh. It reveals the God that was always present beneath mortal flesh. Your hands tremble slightly as you make final adjustments, knowing that thousands of subjects will see your handiwork and understand through it the overwhelming power of their divine ruler. With Pharaoh prepared for the day's duties, you turn to your own varied responsibilities. The palace operates like a vast organism, each servant a vital organ, ensuring the smooth functioning of the whole. Today, you will spend time in the textile workshops, where the finest linens in the world are woven by skilled craftswomen whose techniques have been passed down through generations. The workshop buzzes with quiet activity as dozens of women work at looms that stretch across the room. The linen being produced here will clothe not only the royal family, but also serve as burial wrappings for the eventual journey to the afterlife. You join a team preparing thread, your fingers working with practiced efficiency to ensure each strand meets the impossibly high standards required for royal use. As you work, the conversation flows in hushed tones. The women share news from their home villages, updates on family members, gossip about palace life. But always underlying these human concerns is the awareness of your greater purpose. You are not merely making cloth. You are creating the very fabric that will preserve divine essence for eternity. The afternoon brings different duties. You make your way to the palace temples, where daily offerings must be prepared and presented to the gods who protect Egypt and its divine ruler. The temple complex within the palace rivals any in the kingdom, its walls covered in gold leaf that catches and amplifies every ray of sunlight. Here you work under the supervision of priestesses who have devoted their entire lives to maintaining the cosmic balance. Your task is to prepare the food offerings: bread, beer, meat, fruits, and vegetables arranged in precise patterns that mirror the celestial order. Each item must be perfect, for the gods are said to consume the spiritual essence of these offerings, leaving behind only the physical forms. As you arrange lotus flowers around platters of roasted duck, a priestess named Isis Nofret instructs you in the deeper meanings behind your work. The lotus represents rebirth, she explains, her voice carrying the authority of one who speaks directly with the divine. Its placement here ensures that Pharaoh's power will be renewed each day, just as the sun dies each evening and is reborn each dawn. These lessons transform your understanding of every task. You begin to see how your work as a servant connects to the great cosmic machinery that keeps Egypt prosperous and secure. The bread you bake feeds not just the royal body, but nourishes the divine essence within. The chambers you clean become sacred spaces where gods and mortals commune. The garments you tend transform a human form into a living deity. The late afternoon brings you to one of your most cherished duties, attending to the royal children. Despite their divine nature, they remain children with a child's needs for comfort and play. You help bathe the young prince in water scented with lotus oil, your touch gentle as you wash hair that will one day wear the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. The princess, barely 6 years old, chatters excitedly as you braid her hair with golden threads. She tells you stories of her dreams, where she flies like a falcon over the Nile and speaks with the gods who promise her great adventures. You listen with the attention due to divine words, even when spoken by a child's lips. In her innocent chatter, you hear echoes of the prophecies that shape Egypt's destiny. As evening approaches, your duties shift to preparing for the royal dining ritual. The great hall where Pharaoh takes the evening meal is a marvel of artistic achievement. Pillars carved to resemble lotus stems and papyrus flowers, ceiling painted to mirror the star-filled sky, walls depicting the abundance that flows from divine rule. You help arrange the dining couches with cushions stuffed with ostrich feathers and covered in silk imported from distant lands. The low tables are set with vessels of gold and silver, each piece crafted by master artisans and blessed by temple priests. The very act of dining becomes a religious ceremony, each bite a communion with the gods who provide Egypt's abundance. Tonight's menu reflects the season's bounty. Fresh fish from the Nile, roasted fowl from the palace aviaries, fruits and vegetables from gardens tended by specialists who understand the sacred properties of each plant. You help the kitchen servants arrange these offerings on platters decorated with precious stones, each dish a work of art worthy of divine consumption. As the royal family takes their evening meal, You and other servants maintain perfect stillness along the walls, ready to respond to any need but invisible unless summoned. You watch in silent awe as the living gods partake of earthly sustenance, the simple act of eating transformed into a divine mystery through the power of their nature. The conversation at the royal table speaks of great affairs of state, reports from provincial governors, plans for new temple construction, diplomatic correspondence from foreign kings who seek Egypt's favor. You understand that you are witnessing the governance of the mightiest empire on earth, decisions that will affect millions of lives spoken in the same calm tones one might use to discuss the weather. After the meal, as the royal family retires to their private chambers, your work continues. The palace must be prepared for the night's rest, but also for the spiritual journeys that occur during sleep. You help burn incense in the corridors, its sacred smoke carrying prayers to the gods who watch over Egypt's dreams. In the royal bedchambers, you assist with the evening transformation. The ceremonial regalia is carefully removed and stored in sacred chests, each piece wrapped in blessed linen. Pharaoh's human form emerges from beneath the divine costume. Yet even in simple sleeping garments, the aura of divinity remains unmistakable. The Queen's evening routine requires its own careful attention. You help remove the elaborate wigs and jewelry that mark her station, brushing her natural hair with combs made from sacred wood. Her cosmetics must be cleansed with oils blessed by priestesses of Hathor, the goddess of beauty and love. As the royal family settles into sleep, your own day is far from over. The palace maintains its own rhythm during the night hours, and servants work in shifts to ensure that divine needs are met at every moment. Tonight you will join the team responsible for maintaining the sacred fires that burn continuously in the palace temples. The work requires both physical endurance and spiritual discipline. The fires must never be allowed to die, for they represent the eternal nature of Pharaoh's divine essence. You feed precious woods to the flames, cedar from Lebanon, ebony from Nubia, aromatic resins that create smoke pleasing to the gods. The night hours also bring opportunities for learning that daylight duties don't allow. Older servants share the accumulated wisdom of decades spent in royal service. You learn to read the subtle signs that indicate Pharaoh's mood, the slight variations in routine that accommodate the changing seasons, the protocols that govern interaction with visiting dignitaries. An elderly woman named Meretneith, who has served 3 pharaohs during her long career, becomes your teacher in these midnight hours. The greatest secret of palace service, she whispers as you both tend the sacred flames, is understanding that we serve not just a person, but an idea. Pharaoh represents the order that keeps chaos at bay. When we serve faithfully, we maintain the very foundation of civilization. Her words resonate deeply as you watch the flames dance in the darkness. Through the high windows, you can see the stars that guide Egypt's destiny, the same constellations that shone down upon the first pharaohs who united the 2 lands. You feel your connection to this eternal chain of service, each generation of servants maintaining the divine order that makes Egypt great. As dawn approaches and your long day of service nears its end, you reflect on the extraordinary life you have been privileged to live. From humble village origins, you have become part of the most magnificent court on earth. Your hands have touched objects of unimaginable value. Your eyes have witnessed ceremonies that maintain the cosmic balance. Your life has gained meaning through service to the divine. The pre-dawn darkness begins to lighten as you make your way back to the servants' quarters. Around you, the palace stirs as a new day begins, bringing fresh opportunities to serve, to learn, to participate in the great work of maintaining divine order. Your body is weary from the long hours, but your spirit feels renewed by the sacred purpose that guides every aspect of your existence. As you settle onto your sleeping mat for a few hours of rest before the cycle begins anew, You offer a quiet prayer of gratitude to the gods who have granted you this extraordinary life. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow in wisdom and devotion, new moments of awe as you continue your service in the house of the living God. In the distance, the bronze bells begin their morning song, calling the faithful to another day of sacred service. You close your eyes and drift towards sleep, your dreams filled with golden light and the eternal promise of divine purpose that transforms even the humblest service into an act of cosmic significance. Boring history. Your life as a female servant for a pharaoh. Part 8. As you emerge from the sacred chamber where you've just completed the evening vigil, the first rays of dawn are beginning to creep across the horizon, painting the palace walls in hues of gold and amber. Your bare feet move silently across the cool limestone floors as you make your way to the preparation chambers, where the most crucial work of your day awaits. Today, like every day for the past 7 years since you were chosen for service, you will participate in rituals that most people will never witness, ceremonies so sacred that speaking of them outside these walls would mean instant death. The morning purification ritual begins before the sun fully rises. You join the other female servants in the sacred pool, its waters infused with natron salt and blessed oils that have been prepared according to recipes passed down through generations of temple priestesses. The water is always precisely the right temperature, maintained by servants who tend the heating chambers below throughout the night. As you lower yourself into the pool, you feel the familiar sensation of the sacred waters washing away not just the physical remnants of sleep, but the spiritual impurities that accumulate during the vulnerable hours of darkness when evil spirits are said to roam freely. The purification is not merely about cleanliness, though hygiene is certainly important in your role. You understand, as all servants in the Pharaoh's household do, that you are participating in a cosmic ritual that maintains the delicate balance between order and chaos, between the divine realm of the gods and the mortal world of humans. Every drop of water that touches your skin, every prayer whispered as you cleanse yourself, contributes to the great work of preserving Ma'at, the fundamental principle of truth, justice, and cosmic order that keeps the universe functioning as it should. After the purification, you dress in the simple but clean linen garments that mark you as a servant of the divine household. The fabric is finer than what common people wear, but deliberately plain to avoid any appearance of competing with the Pharaoh's own divine radiance. Your hair is arranged in the prescribed manner, oiled and braided, according to strict protocols that have been established by the high priestesses. Even the smallest details of your appearance carry spiritual significance, from the copper amulets you wear to protect against malevolent forces, to the specific way you tie your sandals to ensure you can move swiftly and silently when duty calls. The first major task of the day involves preparing the Pharaoh's morning meal, though calling it merely a meal vastly understates its true importance. What you are preparing is a sacred offering, food that will nourish not just the Pharaoh's mortal body, but his divine essence, the portion of him that connects directly to the gods themselves. Every ingredient has been selected according to ancient wisdom. Every cooking method follows procedures that were established when the first pharaohs ruled Egypt thousands of years ago. You begin by grinding grain that has been blessed by the priests of Renenutet, the cobra goddess who protects the harvest. The grain comes from fields that are considered sacred, tended by farmers who undergo their own purification rituals before they are allowed to plant or harvest. As you work the grinding stone in smooth, rhythmic motions, you whisper the prescribed prayers, asking the gods to infuse the grain with their divine essence. The sound of stone against stone creates a steady rhythm that seems to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself, connecting you to the eternal cycles of planting, growing, harvesting, and renewal that keep Egypt prosperous. The bread you make from this grain is unlike anything eaten by common people. It is enriched with honey that comes from hives maintained within the temple complex, milk from cows that are considered sacred animals, and eggs from geese that are raised specifically for the Pharaoh's table. Each ingredient is added with careful attention to both quantity and timing, following recipes that are considered state secrets. Too much honey could disrupt the spiritual balance of the meal. Too little milk could fail to provide the necessary connection to Hathor, the cow goddess who protects the Pharaoh's divine authority. As the bread bakes in ovens that are tended by specialized servants, you turn your attention to preparing the fruits and vegetables that will accompany the morning meal. These are not ordinary produce, but items that have been grown in the palace gardens under the supervision of priest gardeners who understand the mystical properties of different plants. Figs are selected for their connection to the sycamore tree, which is sacred to Hathor and represents the link between earth and sky. Grapes are chosen for their association with Osiris and the promise of rebirth and renewal. Even the way you cut and arrange these foods follows ancient patterns that are believed to channel divine energy. The most delicate and important part of preparing the Pharaoh's morning meal involves the meat offerings. These come from animals that have been raised within the sacred precincts of the palace, fed on blessed grain, and tended by servants who maintain ritual purity at all times. The animals are slaughtered according to precise ceremonial procedures, with every cut made in accordance with religious law. As a female servant, you are not permitted to perform the actual slaughter, but you play a crucial role in preparing the meat afterward, removing any impurities and seasoning it with sacred spices that have been blessed by the high priests. The cooking process itself is a form of prayer. You tend the fires with wood that comes from trees considered sacred to different gods, each type of wood adding its own spiritual properties to the food. Cedar brings purification, acacia provides protection, and palm wood connects the meal to the promise of eternal life. As the meat cooks, you monitor not just its physical preparation, but its spiritual transformation, watching for signs that the gods are pleased with your offering. While the food prepares, you also ready the vessels and implements that will be used for the Pharaoh's meal. These are not ordinary dishes, but sacred objects, made from gold, silver, and precious stones, each one crafted according to religious specifications and blessed by the high priests before it can be used. You polish each cup and plate with special cloths that have been woven from flax, grown in temple fields, using cleaning compounds that include natron salt and other purifying substances. The arrangement of these vessels on the Pharaoh's table follows ancient patterns that are believed to channel cosmic energy and maintain the proper relationship between the earthly and divine realms. As you work, you are acutely aware that you are participating in rituals that stretch back to the very beginning of Egyptian civilization. The recipes you follow, the prayers you whisper, the precise movements of your hands as you prepare each element of the meal, all of these connect you to an unbroken chain of servants who have performed these same tasks for thousands of years. You carry within your memory not just the practical knowledge of how to prepare food fit for a god, but the spiritual understanding of why these rituals matter, how they contribute to the cosmic order that keeps Egypt prosperous and the Pharaoh's divine authority intact. The responsibility you bear is enormous. A mistake in the preparation of the Pharaoh's food could be interpreted as a sign of divine displeasure, potentially triggering political upheaval or religious crisis. But more than that, you believe deeply that your work has real spiritual consequences, that the care and devotion you bring to these tasks actually helps maintain the balance between order and chaos that keeps the universe functioning properly. This belief gives profound meaning to even the most mundane aspects of your daily routine, transforming ordinary cooking into sacred work. When the morning meal is finally ready, you participate in the elaborate ritual of serving it to the pharaoh. This is not simply a matter of bringing food to a table, but a complex ceremony involving multiple servants, each with specific roles and responsibilities. You carry one of the sacred vessels, moving with the slow, measured pace that befits such a solemn occasion. The pharaoh sits not on an ordinary chair, but on a throne that is itself considered a sacred object, positioned to align with cosmic forces and surrounded by symbols of divine authority. As the pharaoh eats, you and the other servants maintain perfect silence, understanding that this is a moment of communion between the divine and mortal realms. Every bite the pharaoh takes is believed to strengthen his connection to the gods, reinforcing his role as the bridge between heaven and earth that makes Egypt's prosperity possible. You watch carefully for any signs of divine favor or displeasure, ready to respond instantly to any need that might arise. After the morning meal is complete, your duties shift to other aspects of maintaining the sacred household. You help prepare the pharaoh for the day's official activities, assisting with the complex process of dressing him in the appropriate regalia for whatever ceremonies or administrative duties await. Each garment has its own spiritual significance, from the crown that channels divine authority to the sandals that connect him to the sacred earth of Egypt. The process of dressing the pharaoh is itself a ritual, with each item of clothing put on in a specific order and accompanied by appropriate prayers. You help arrange the elaborate jewelry that marks his divine status, polishing precious stones and metals that are believed to channel different aspects of divine power. The pharaoh's appearance is never merely decorative, but always symbolic, every element carefully chosen to communicate his role as the living representative of the gods on earth. Throughout the day, you continue to participate in the countless small rituals that maintain the spiritual health of the royal household. You help prepare offerings for the various shrines within the palace complex, arrange flowers and incense according to religious specifications, and assist with the purification ceremonies that mark important transitions in the daily schedule. Each task requires not just practical skill, but deep understanding of religious law and cosmic symbolism. One of your most important ongoing responsibilities involves maintaining the spiritual purity of the spaces where the pharaoh lives and works. This goes far beyond ordinary cleaning to include complex purification rituals that remove spiritual contamination and channel positive energy. You sprinkle blessed water in prescribed patterns, burn specific combinations of incense, and arrange protective amulets according to ancient formulas. The palace must be kept as a perfect sacred space, worthy of housing the divine essence that resides within the pharaoh. As the day progresses, you also help care for the pharaoh's family members, each of whom requires their own specific forms of sacred service. The pharaoh's wives and children are not ordinary people, but beings who share in divine authority through their connection to the living God. Serving them requires the same careful attention to ritual purity and cosmic significance that characterizes all your work, though the specific ceremonies and requirements vary according to their individual roles within the royal family. The care of the royal children is particularly complex, as they must be prepared from an early age to understand and fulfill their divine destiny. You help with their daily purification rituals, assist in their education about religious law and cosmic symbolism, and participate in the ceremonies that mark important stages in their spiritual development. Every aspect of their upbringing is designed to strengthen their connection to the divine realm and prepare them for the sacred responsibilities they will inherit. The afternoon brings different challenges and opportunities. You may be called upon to assist with religious ceremonies in the palace temples, help prepare for state occasions that require elaborate ritual preparations, or participate in the ongoing work of maintaining the vast complex of sacred spaces that make up the royal residence. Each activity demands complete focus and devotion, as any mistake could have serious consequences, not just for you personally, but for the cosmic order itself. One of the most demanding aspects of your service involves the evening rituals that prepare the Pharaoh for the vulnerable hours of darkness. As the sun sets and the forces of chaos grow stronger, elaborate ceremonies must be performed to protect the divine household from malevolent influences. You help prepare protective amulets, arrange guardian symbols, and participate in prayers that invoke the protection of benevolent gods throughout the night. The Pharaoh's evening meal requires the same careful attention to spiritual significance as the morning offering, though the specific foods and preparations may vary according to the season, religious calendar, and astrological considerations. You work with other servants to ensure that every element of the meal supports the Pharaoh's spiritual needs as he prepares for the mystical journey his soul will undertake during sleep. As night falls, you participate in the final purification rituals of the day, cleansing yourself of any spiritual contamination that may have accumulated during your service. This is essential preparation for the night vigil duties that some servants maintain, watching over the sleeping Pharaoh and performing protective rituals that ensure his safe passage through the dangerous hours of darkness. Your life as a female servant in the Pharaoh's household is one of profound purpose and meaning, though it demands complete dedication and sacrifice. You have given up the possibility of an ordinary family life, personal possessions, and individual ambitions in service to something far greater than yourself. In return, you have been granted the extraordinary privilege of participating directly in the cosmic drama that maintains universal order and ensures Egypt's continued prosperity. Every day brings new challenges and opportunities to deepen your understanding of the sacred mysteries that govern existence. You are not merely a servant, but a guardian of ancient wisdom, a participant in rituals that connect the mortal world to divine reality, and a vital contributor to the great work of preserving Ma'at for future generations. Your life has meaning and purpose that extends far beyond your individual existence, linking you to the eternal cycles of creation and renewal that keep the universe functioning as the gods intended. The knowledge and skills you have acquired through years of faithful service make you a valuable member of an elite community dedicated to maintaining the cosmic order. You possess understanding of religious law, ritual procedures, and sacred symbolism that is shared by only a small number of people in all of Egypt. This knowledge comes with enormous responsibility, as you are entrusted with secrets that must never be revealed to those outside the sacred household, and practices that must be performed with absolute precision to maintain their spiritual effectiveness. Your days are long and demanding, filled with countless tasks that require both physical skill and spiritual understanding. But you approach each duty with devotion and gratitude, knowing that your service contributes to something infinitely larger and more important than any individual concern. You are part of the great work of maintaining divine order on earth, ensuring that the Pharaoh can fulfill his cosmic role as the bridge between gods and mortals, and preserving the sacred traditions that have made Egypt the most prosperous and stable civilization in the known world. As the Pharaoh's stirring brought ripples across the palace, your fellow servants began their own intimate preparations for the sacred moment of awakening. The textile servants had already been at work in the pre-dawn darkness, their experienced hands selecting the finest linen garments from cedar chests lined with myrrh-soaked cloth. Each piece had been woven on sacred looms by women who fasted during their work, ensuring spiritual purity was woven into every thread. In the royal bedchamber, senior female attendants performed the ritual of dream interpretation, carefully observing the Pharaoh's sleeping expressions and movements to divine any messages the gods might have sent during the night hours. These observations would be recorded on papyrus scrolls and later consulted by the court priests when making important decisions for the kingdom. Your role in these morning preparations was both humble and profound. As one of the junior female servants, you were responsible for maintaining the sacred oils that would anoint the pharaoh's skin, protecting the divine essence within the royal body from the corrupting influences of the mortal world. Each oil had been blessed by different temples: frankincense from the temple of Ra for divine connection, lotus oil from the temple of Isis for rebirth and renewal, and cedar oil from the temple of Ptah for strength and endurance. The process of preparing these oils was a sacred art passed down through generations of palace servants. You had learned to heat them to the precise temperature that would open the pharaoh's pores without causing discomfort, to blend them in proportions that honored each deity equally, and to test their purity by placing a single drop on your own wrist and observing how it absorbed into your skin. The morning ablutions were perhaps the most critical moment of your service, for they represented the daily rebirth of the pharaoh's divine nature. As water was poured from golden vessels, you stood ready with pristine linen towels that had been consecrated in temple ceremonies. The water itself came from sacred wells deep beneath the palace, wells that were said to connect directly to the primordial waters of creation, from which all life emerged. Your movements during these ceremonies were choreographed with the precision of a religious dance. Each gesture had meaning: the way you held the towels, the direction you faced while waiting, the rhythm of your breathing. You had spent months learning these movements from the older servants, practicing in empty chambers until your body could perform them without conscious thought, allowing your mind to focus entirely on the spiritual significance of your actions. The pharaoh's morning meal was another area where your service carried profound symbolic weight. The foods presented were not merely sustenance, but offerings that represented the bounty of Egypt and the favor of the gods. Bread shaped like sacred Ankh symbols, honey that symbolized the sweet words of Ma'at, and milk that represented the nurturing power of Isis were arranged on golden platters that gleamed like captured sunlight. Your responsibility extended to ensuring that each morsel was perfect in both appearance and spiritual purity. You examined every grain of wheat in the bread for signs of corruption, tested every drop of honey for the proper consistency that indicated divine blessing, and verified that the milk came from cows that had been fed only on sacred grasses grown in temple gardens. The preparation of the pharaoh's ceremonial regalia was perhaps the most intricate aspect of your morning duties. The golden crown of Upper and Lower Egypt was not simply placed upon the royal head, but required specific rituals of purification and blessing. You assisted in polishing each precious stone until it caught and reflected light like tiny captured stars, ensuring that the crown would properly channel divine energy when worn. The royal scepters, symbols of the pharaoh's power over life and death, required daily consecration with sacred waters and incense. Your role was to prepare the censers that would burn frankincense and myrrh, creating the aromatic clouds that would purify the regalia and prepare it for another day of divine service. During religious festivals and important state ceremonies, your duties expanded dramatically. You might spend days in preparation, creating special garments embroidered with protective symbols, preparing unique combinations of oils and perfumes that honored specific deities, and learning new rituals that would be performed only once in your lifetime. The Festival of Opet, which celebrated the renewal of the pharaoh's divine power, required particularly intensive preparation. You joined with hundreds of other servants in creating an elaborate procession where every detail had spiritual significance. The flowers scattered before the pharaoh's feet were specific varieties that bloomed only during certain moon phases. The incense burned in the procession's censers was blended according to recipes that dated back to the first dynasties, and the music played by the court musicians followed ancient mathematical patterns that were believed to resonate with the fundamental harmonies of creation. Your knowledge of these rituals made you a keeper of ancient wisdom, even though your social position was humble. You understood the symbolic meaning behind every gesture, every offering, every prayer. You knew which stars had to be visible for certain ceremonies to be effective, which phases of the Nile's flood cycle corresponded to different aspects of divine power, and how the movements of the pharaoh during public appearances created invisible, geometric patterns that strengthened the magical protection around the kingdom. The responsibility of maintaining this knowledge was both a privilege and a burden. You were entrusted with secrets that could not be written down, that existed only in the memories of those who served in the innermost chambers of the palace. These secrets were passed from teacher to student through whispered conversations in hidden alcoves, through subtle demonstrations during routine duties, through the accumulated wisdom of generations of faithful service. Your understanding of palace protocol extended far beyond simple etiquette to encompass the deeper spiritual laws that governed royal behavior. You knew that the pharaoh could not turn left before turning right when entering certain chambers, that specific prayers had to be recited before touching sacred objects, and that certain colors could not be worn during particular seasons without risking cosmic imbalance. This knowledge made you an active participant in maintaining the divine order that kept Egypt prosperous and protected. Your careful attention to ritual details helped ensure that the magical barriers protecting the kingdom remained strong, that the pharaoh's connection to the gods remained clear and unobstructed, and that the ancient covenants between the divine and mortal realms continued to be honored. As the morning progressed and the palace fully awakened around you, you carried within yourself the satisfaction of knowing that your service contributed to something infinitely greater than yourself. Through your hands passed the sacred implements that maintained the cosmic order. Through your knowledge flowed the ancient wisdom that kept civilization stable. And through your devotion moved the spiritual forces that protected Egypt from the chaos that constantly threatened to overwhelm the world. Boring history. Your life as a female servant for a pharaoh. Part 10. As the first pale light of dawn begins to filter through the narrow windows of the palace, you stir from your brief rest upon the reed mat that serves as your bed. The night vigil has ended, but your duties as a sacred servant to the pharaoh are far from over. Around you, the other female servants begin to wake, their movements deliberate and purposeful despite the early hour. There is no time for the luxury of slow awakening in the divine household of the living God. Your body aches from the long hours spent maintaining the sacred flames and preparing the ritual offerings throughout the night. The soles of your feet are tender from the cold stone floors, and your hands bear the subtle marks of countless tasks. The slight staining from handling sacred oils, the small burns from tending braziers, the calluses from grinding grain for the pharaoh's daily bread. These are the invisible badges of your service, marks that speak to your dedication to maintaining the cosmic order through your humble but essential work. The hierarchy of servants begins to organize itself as consciousness returns to the palace quarters. The senior priestesses, women who have served the royal household for decades, rise first and begin their morning ablutions with practiced efficiency. Their movements are fluid and certain, born of years spent perfecting the intricate rituals that sustain the pharaoh's divine power. You watch them carefully, still learning the subtle gestures and precise timing that separate a competent servant from one who truly embodies the sacred nature of their role. Your own morning routine begins with the ritual purification that must precede all contact with the pharaoh's sacred spaces. You make your way to the designated washing area, where large pottery vessels filled with water from the sacred Nile await. The water is cool against your skin as you perform the prescribed ablutions, washing your hands, feet, and face while reciting the proper prayers under your breath. The familiar words bring comfort and focus, centering your mind on the divine purpose that guides all your actions. The linen garments you don are crisp and white, woven from the finest flax that grows along the riverbanks. Every fold must be perfect, every drape precisely arranged according to the ancient traditions that govern the appearance of those who serve in the pharaoh's presence. Your hair is bound back in a simple but elegant style, adorned with a thin band of gold that marks your status as a palace servant. No ornament is worn for vanity here. Every element of your appearance serves to honor the divine king you serve. As you dress, you can hear the sounds of the palace awakening around you. The soft padding of sandaled feet on stone corridors, the gentle murmur of morning prayers being recited in the various shrine rooms, the distant sound of servants beginning their tasks in the kitchens and workshops. The palace is like a vast organism coming to life, each person playing their crucial role in maintaining the complex machinery of divine rule. Your first formal duty of the day is to join the other servants in the preparation of the pharaoh's morning meal. This is no simple matter of cooking food, but rather a sacred ritual that must be performed with the utmost precision and reverence. Every ingredient has been carefully selected and blessed, every cooking vessel purified according to ancient protocols. The bread must be baked from grain that has been ground to exactly the right consistency, the meat prepared from animals that have been ritually slaughtered and inspected by the temple priests. You take your place among the other servants in the palace kitchens, a vast complex of rooms dominated by large ovens and cooking hearths. The air is warm and fragrant with the scents of baking bread and aromatic spices. Your particular responsibility is the preparation of the sacred oils that will accompany the pharaoh's meal, not for cooking, but for the ritual anointing of the food that transforms it from mere sustenance into divine nourishment. The process of preparing these oils requires both skill and spiritual focus. You begin by selecting the finest sesame seeds, examining each one to ensure it meets the exacting standards required for the pharaoh's table. These seeds are then ground using a stone quern, the rhythmic motion of the grinding becoming a form of meditation as you focus your thoughts on the sacred nature of your task. The oil that emerges is golden and pure, carrying within it the essence of the sun god Ra, whose divine energy will nourish the pharaoh's mortal form. As you work, you are acutely aware of the other servants moving around you, each focused on their own specialized tasks. There is the bread baker, whose hands shape the dough with an almost supernatural skill, creating loaves that are perfectly formed and evenly textured. Nearby, another servant tends to the preparation of the sacred beer, the fermented beverage that serves not only as refreshment, but as a link between the mortal and divine realms. The brewing process is as much ritual as craft, with specific prayers and offerings required at each stage. The morning meal preparation reaches its climax as all the various elements come together under the watchful eye of the chief cook, a woman whose decades of service have given her an almost mystical understanding of the pharaoh's preferences and needs. She moves among the servants like a conductor directing an orchestra, her quiet commands ensuring that every dish will be ready at precisely the moment it is required. There is no room for error here. To serve imperfect food to the divine king would be not merely a mistake, but a cosmic transgression. As the food nears completion, you join the procession that will carry the morning meal to the pharaoh's private dining chamber. This is always a moment of particular solemnity, as you are about to enter one of the most sacred spaces in the palace. The dining chamber is a masterpiece of architectural and artistic achievement, its walls covered in painted scenes depicting the pharaoh's divine nature and his relationship with the gods. The ceiling is painted to represent the night sky, with stars picked out in gold against a deep blue background. The pharaoh's table is a work of art in itself, crafted from the finest ebony and inlaid with precious metals and stones. It sits at the center of the room like an altar, surrounded by chairs whose elegance and craftsmanship speak to the divine status of those who sit upon them. As you help to arrange the food upon this sacred table, you are reminded once again of the profound responsibility that rests upon your shoulders. You are not merely serving a meal, but participating in a cosmic ritual that maintains the balance between heaven and earth. The presentation of the food follows strict protocols that have been handed down through generations of palace servants. Each dish must be placed in its designated position, with specific orientations and arrangements that reflect the sacred geometry underlying all Egyptian religious practice. The bread is arranged to represent the rays of the sun, the fruits positioned to mirror the cycle of the seasons, the meat prepared in ways that honor the animals whose lives have been given to sustain the divine king. Once the meal has been properly arranged, you withdraw to allow the pharaoh to dine in the solitude appropriate to his divine nature. This is not a time for casual conversation or human companionship, but for communion with the gods who speak to him through the sacred food. You wait in the adjoining chamber, ready to respond instantly to any need or request, but understanding that your presence during the actual meal would be an intrusion upon the sacred space of divine contemplation. During this waiting period, you use the time to prepare for the day's other duties. The pharaoh's morning meal is just the beginning of a long day filled with rituals, ceremonies, and administrative tasks that require your constant attention and support. You review in your mind the schedule of activities, ensuring that you understand your role in each event and have prepared any materials or supplies that will be needed. One of your most important ongoing responsibilities is the maintenance of the pharaoh's personal shrine, a private sanctuary where he conducts his most intimate communications with the gods. This sacred space requires daily attention, with fresh flowers, burning incense, and perfectly arranged offerings that must be renewed each morning. The work is delicate and precise, requiring not only physical skill, but deep spiritual understanding of the symbolic meaning behind each element. The shrine itself is a marvel of artistic and religious achievement, its walls covered in intricate hieroglyphic texts that record the pharaoh's divine genealogy and his sacred obligations to the gods. The central focus is a golden statue of the god Amun-Ra, whose divine essence is believed to dwell within the carefully crafted form. Before this statue, you arrange the daily offerings: fresh bread, pure water, fragrant oils, and flowers whose colors and scents have been chosen for their spiritual significance. The arrangement of these offerings is not random, but follows complex patterns that reflect the cosmic order. The bread must be placed to represent the 4 cardinal directions, acknowledging the pharaoh's dominion over all the lands of Egypt. The water, drawn from the sacred Nile at dawn, symbolizes the life-giving force that flows through all creation. The oils, prepared with aromatic herbs and resins, carry prayers and petitions to the divine realm through their fragrant smoke. As you work in the shrine, you are often moved by the profound sense of connection to something greater than yourself. The careful attention to detail, the reverent handling of sacred objects, the whispered prayers that accompany each action. All of these combine to create an atmosphere of transcendence that lifts your spirit beyond the mundane concerns of daily life. In these moments, you understand why the ancient Egyptians believed that proper ritual could bridge the gap between the mortal and divine realms. The completion of the shrine preparation marks another milestone in your morning routine, but there is no time for rest or reflection. The palace operates on a schedule as precise as the movement of the stars, and each task must be completed in its proper sequence to ensure the smooth functioning of the divine household. Your next responsibility is to assist in the preparation of the pharaoh's ceremonial garments for the day's official duties. The royal wardrobe is housed in a series of chambers that rival any treasury in their wealth and splendor. Countless garments hang in carefully organized rows, each one a masterpiece of textile art created by the finest craftsmen in the kingdom. The fabrics range from the finest linen, so delicately woven that it seems almost transparent, to heavy ceremonial robes adorned with gold thread and precious stones. Each garment has its specific purpose and significance, appropriate only for certain ceremonies or occasions. Your role in the dressing process is both practical and symbolic. You help to select the appropriate garments based on the day's schedule, ensuring that the pharaoh's appearance will properly reflect his divine status and the sacred nature of his activities. This requires detailed knowledge not only of the various garments and their uses, but also of the complex ceremonial calendar that governs royal life. The process of dressing the pharaoh is itself a ritual, with each garment put on in a specific order while appropriate prayers are recited. You assist the senior dressers in this sacred task, your hands trembling slightly with the awareness that you are helping to transform a mortal man into the living embodiment of divine power. The transformation is both physical and spiritual. As each piece of regalia is added, you can sense the pharaoh taking on more fully the awesome responsibility of his role as intermediary between gods and mortals. The crown is always the final element, and its placement upon the pharaoh's head marks the completion of the transformation. This is not merely a piece of jewelry, but a sacred object that channels divine power and authority. As it settles into place, you can feel the change in the very air around you, the presence of divinity made manifest in human form. With the pharaoh properly attired for the day's ceremonies, your attention turns to the preparation of the throne room where he will hold court and conduct the business of governing his vast kingdom. This magnificent chamber is the heart of royal power, where the will of the gods is translated into earthly law and policy. Every detail of its arrangement must be perfect, from the positioning of the great throne itself to the precise placement of the ceremonial objects that symbolize royal authority. The throne room preparation is a collaborative effort involving dozens of servants, each responsible for specific aspects of the overall presentation. You join the team responsible for arranging the ceremonial objects, the crook and flail that symbolize the pharaoh's role as shepherd of his people, the sacred serpent that represents his divine protection, the ankh that signifies his power over life and death. Each object must be placed with mathematical precision, their positions calculated according to ancient formulas that ensure the proper flow of divine energy through the space. As you work, you are constantly aware of the weight of history that surrounds you. This throne room has witnessed the making of momentous decisions that have shaped the course of Egyptian civilization. Here, pharaohs have received ambassadors from distant lands, pronounced judgments that affected the lives of millions, and communed with the gods to seek guidance for their people. The very stones seem to vibrate with the accumulated power of centuries of divine rule. The arrival of the first petitioners and officials marks the beginning of the formal day, and you take your place among the servants who will attend the pharaoh throughout the long hours of ceremony and administration that lie ahead. Your role during these public appearances is largely invisible, but absolutely essential. You ensure that everything the pharaoh might need is immediately available, from ceremonial objects to refreshments to writing materials for recording important decisions. The pageantry of the royal court is a sight that never fails to inspire awe, even after months of daily exposure. The pharaoh enters in full regalia, his divine presence immediately transforming the atmosphere of the room. Officials and petitioners prostrate themselves as he passes, their foreheads touching the cool stone floor in acknowledgement of his supreme authority. The ceremony of his entrance follows ancient protocols, each gesture and movement heavy with symbolic meaning. As the day's business begins, you observe the incredible complexity of governing a kingdom that stretches from the cataracts of Nubia to the shores of the Mediterranean. Administrators report on tax collections, military commanders brief the pharaoh on border security, priests seek approval for temple renovations, and foreign ambassadors present gifts and messages from distant rulers. Each matter requires careful consideration, as the Pharaoh's decisions will affect the lives of millions of his subjects. Your own contribution to this grand enterprise may seem small, but you understand its vital importance. By ensuring that every detail of the ceremonial setting is perfect, you help maintain the sacred atmosphere that legitimizes the Pharaoh's authority. By anticipating his needs and providing seamless support, you allow him to focus completely on the weighty matters of state that demand his attention. Your invisible service is one of the many threads that weave together to create the magnificent tapestry of divine rule. The morning hours pass in a blur of ceremonies, audiences, and administrative business. Throughout it all, you remain alert and ready, your attention divided between the immediate practical needs of your service and the larger spiritual significance of the work you perform. You are not merely a servant in the conventional sense, but a participant in the great cosmic drama that maintains the harmony between heaven and earth. As the sun reaches its zenith and the morning's formal business draws to a close, you reflect on the profound privilege of your position. To serve in the household of the divine king is to touch the very essence of Egyptian civilization, to participate in traditions that stretch back to the dawn of history. The physical demands of your work, the careful attention to detail, the constant awareness of protocol and procedure, all of these are small prices to pay for the honor of contributing to the maintenance of cosmic order. The midday break provides a brief respite from the intensity of palace service, but even this time is structured according to the needs of the royal household. You join the other servants for a simple meal, the food plain but nourishing after the morning's exertions. The conversation is quiet and focused on practical matters, adjustments to the afternoon schedule, preparation for upcoming ceremonies, coordination of duties among the various service teams. Even in these moments of relative relaxation, you remain conscious of your role and responsibilities. There is no true separation between your personal life and your service to the Pharaoh. Every aspect of your existence is shaped by the demands of your sacred calling. This total dedication is not seen as a burden, but as a privilege, a chance to dedicate your life to something greater than individual concerns or ambitions. As you prepare to resume your afternoon duties, you carry with you the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing your place in the grand scheme of things. You are one small but essential part of the vast machinery that maintains the prosperity and stability of Egypt, a civilization that has endured for thousands of years precisely because of the dedication and skill of countless servants like yourself. In your humble service lies the foundation of greatness, the bedrock upon which divine rule rests. The afternoon will bring new challenges and responsibilities, but you face them with confidence born of training, experience, and unwavering faith in the sacred nature of your calling. You are a servant of the Pharaoh, guardian of tradition, keeper of the cosmic balance that ensures Egypt's eternal glory. In this role, you find not just purpose, but profound meaning, a connection to the divine that transforms even the most mundane tasks into acts of sacred devotion. Looking at your script summary and the reference materials, I can see you need part 11 of a 12-part series about life as a female servant to a pharaoh. Based on the established narrative arc, this would be approaching the climax of the series. Here's part 11. The sacred oils shimmer in the pre-dawn darkness as you perform the final purification ritual of your service. Tonight marks the culmination of years spent as guardian of divine mysteries, protector of cosmic balance, keeper of Ma'at itself. The pharaoh lies in preparation for his journey to the afterlife, and you must ensure his transformation from mortal ruler to eternal God proceeds without flaw. Your hands move with practiced precision, anointing his body with the 37 sacred oils, each one corresponding to a different aspect of divine power he will need in the duat. The scent of myrrh and frankincense fills the chamber as you whisper the incantations learned from the high priestesses, words that have echoed through these halls for 3,000 years. The responsibility weighs heavier than the golden amulets you place upon his chest. One mistake, one forgotten prayer, one improperly positioned protective charm could doom not just the Pharaoh's soul, but the entire kingdom. Without their divine king successfully reaching the afterlife and joining Ra in his eternal solar bark, the Nile might cease to flood, the sun might fail to rise, and chaos would consume all of Egypt. You remember your first day in the palace, when the high priestess selected you from among dozens of young women. "The gods have marked you," she had said, tracing the small birthmark on your wrist that resembled the hieroglyph for protection. "You will serve not just a man, but the living embodiment of Horus himself." Now, as you adjust the golden funeral mask over his face, you understand the full weight of those words. The canopic jars stand ready, each protected by its corresponding deity. Imseti guards the liver, Hapi protects the lungs, Duamutef watches over the stomach, and Kebe-Senuef safeguards the intestines. You have blessed each jar personally, ensuring the pharaoh's organs will be preserved for eternity. Your own car will be bound to these vessels, following him into the afterlife to continue your service beyond death. The Book of the Dead lies open beside the sarcophagus, its papyrus surface covered with spells you helped select based on your intimate knowledge of the pharaoh's character and deeds. Spell 125, the negative confession, where he will declare his innocence before the 42 judges of the dead. Spell 30b, ensuring his heart will not testify against him when weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Spell 6, which will animate the Shabti figures to perform labor in the afterlife. As the embalmers complete their 70-day process, you oversee every detail. The natron salt must be changed precisely, the body positioned correctly, the wrappings applied with mathematical precision. Between each layer of linen, you place amulets whose positions you have memorized from ancient texts. The Jed pillar for stability, the Tayet knot for protection, the Wedjat eye for wholeness and healing. Your fellow servants move like shadows in the torchlight, each performing their designated roles in this cosmic drama. The musicians play softly, their harps and flutes weaving melodies that will guide the pharaoh's bay back to his body each night. The dancers move in patterns that mirror the celestial mechanics, their gestures opening pathways between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. The high priest arrives as dawn approaches, his leopard skin robe glinting with gold thread. Together, you perform the opening of the mouth ceremony, using sacred tools to restore the pharaoh's senses for the afterlife. The netchery blades, the Pesesh Kef knife, the ceremonial adze, each instrument blessed and positioned according to rituals older than the pyramids themselves. You touch the golden mask with a ritual wand, speaking the words that will allow him to breathe in the afterlife. Your mouth is opened by Ptah. Your mouth is split open by Thoth, with that adze of iron with which he split open the mouths of the gods. The weight of divine authority flows through your voice, channeling powers that predate human civilization. The tomb itself represents the ultimate expression of your devotion. Every wall painting tells a story you helped craft, depicting the pharaoh's journey through the 12 hours of night in the Duat. The ceiling mirrors the night sky precisely as it appeared on the day of his birth, ensuring celestial harmony throughout eternity. The false doors will allow his car to travel freely between worlds, while the hidden chambers protect treasures you personally selected and blessed. Your own burial preparations wait in a smaller chamber nearby. As his servant in life, you will accompany him in death, your mummified form placed in a subsidiary tomb to continue your service throughout eternity. The thought brings not fear, but profound satisfaction. You have lived in the presence of divinity, touched the very mechanisms that keep the universe functioning. played your part in the eternal drama of death and rebirth that sustains all existence. The final moment approaches as the sarcophagus lid is lowered into place. Your hands rest upon the golden surface one last time, feeling the pulse of divine energy that still emanates from within. You whisper a personal prayer, not recorded in any official text, speaking directly to the man you served, as well as the God he has become. The tomb entrance seals with a sound like thunder, and you know that your earthly service is complete. Yet this is not an ending, but a transformation. Tomorrow you will join him in the eternal realm, continuing your sacred duties in the presence of Ra himself, ensuring that Ma'at endures forever and the cosmic order remains unbroken. Your life as a female servant to the Pharaoh has been the ultimate expression of devotion, a testament to the power of mortal hands to shape divine destiny. In serving him, you have served all of Egypt, all of creation itself. The sun will rise tomorrow because of your faithful service, and it will continue rising for all eternity because your devotion transcends death itself. So as we bid farewell to medieval Scotland and its countless struggles, we're reminded that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit finds ways to endure. From the clan feuds that tore communities apart to the grinding poverty that defined daily existence, from the devastating plagues that swept the land to the harsh realities of feudal oppression, the people of this era faced challenges that would test the strongest among us. Yet, through it all, they persevered. They found moments of joy in harvest celebrations and feast days. They discovered strength in the bonds of kinship and community. They held fast to their faith and their fierce sense of identity, refusing to be broken by even the most overwhelming adversity. As you drift off to sleep tonight, carry with you the lessons of these forgotten heroes, the ploughmen and shepherds, the crafters and labourers, the mothers and fathers who built the foundations of our modern world through their quiet courage and unwavering determination. Their legacy lives on, not in grand monuments or written histories, but in the very spirit of resilience that courses through our veins today.